The first thing he senses is cold, a deep, biting chill that has nothing to do with the weather, and everything to do with the freezing truth that his body is no longer holding its breath. Breathing like a living person should, high above him, a desperate voice is crying out, shouting in a panic-stricken voice, while a small girl wails nearby in absolute terror. The wet sound of chest compressions keeps a steady, frantic beat against his chest. He drifts in that darkness. For a very long time, nothing changes. And then an entirely different memory begins to surface from the deep dark. A past life from a world completely unlike this one. He remembers crossing a busy street. He had been crossing a road to register at Jinling University. A massive truck had rounded the corner far too quickly. His last sight was a roaring engine grill and a sudden flash of bright orange paint. Was he dead? He asked himself this dryly, feeling no real surprise. Getting struck at 80 kilometers an hour meant there was no walking away from that. He reflects on his brief previous life and how simply it could be summarized. An orphan taken in by foster parents who were kind enough until they had their own son. After that, he became nothing more than an unwanted, extra mouse at their dinner table. Never beaten, never cast out, just quietly erased from the family arithmetic. He didn't hate them, at least they didn't throw him out on the streets. They fed him and paid for school, so he repaid them with hard work. Top of his class, he fought hard from primary school onward to prove his worth, scoring third in the entire county on the grueling university entrance exam. That landed him admission to Jinling University, but on his way there, tragedy struck. A runaway truck took everything. He feels a thin sliver of regret. And yet there is a strange sense of relief. Nobody would truly miss him. Just an empty chair at a holiday table. He never possessed enough to lose. But then a voice calls out, multiple voices actually speaking through the dark. They sound familiar yet strange, pulling at a heart he didn't think he had. The ringing in his ears slowly fades away, replaced by frantic cries. A man screams for Gallant to wake up, begging him to open his eyes. A little girl shrieks, sobbing that her brother doesn't want her anymore. Desperate hands shake him, pumping against his chest with wild energy. The burning weight of salty seawater fills his stomach and suffocates his lungs. He tries to speak, but only vomits a rush of brine onto the cold rocks. Light noise, the heavy weight of a wet wool cloak. The smell of brine and stone. He opens his eyes to see men kneeling around him. They wear dark wool cloaks, their western faces filled with deep anxiety. He sees beaches, reefs, the long tide that almost took him. The dark water is slowly pulling back from the shore that nearly claimed his life. A nobleman in a heavy cloak pulls him close, weeping onto his wet hair. A little blonde girl, barely 4, clings to his arm and sobs uncontrollably, burying her face in his wet sleeve. Then, a second wave of memories hits. Thoughts rising from somewhere deeper than his own mind, settling inside him. The memories belong to an 8-year-old boy named Gallant Tarth, the eldest son of House Tarth, heir to Evenfall Hall on this island. The boy had run off after hearing a local fisherman speak of a faint cyan glow and an orange shimmer in a sea cave at Morn's Point. He had been reckless, proud enough to dive into rising water in pursuit of a legendary sword. He had transmigrated. The realization lands quietly, without much fanfare. No grand dramatic noise at all. Suddenly, he is in Westeros, the Stormlands House Tarth. This is the world of Game of Thrones, the series he loved most back on Earth, reading the books right after finishing. The show filled with dragons, Essos, Ashai, and the unknown lands beyond. And the small blonde girl clutching his arm, with her freckles and sturdy little body and sapphire eyes, is Brienne the beauty, the only female knight in the 7 kingdoms, the girl who would only ever mention once that her older brother, 4 years older than her, drowned when she was 4. That brother was Gallant Tarth, yes, the very same one. Shock should set in. Instead, he feels something incredibly close to relief. On Earth, he had been almost no one. Here, he is the heir to an island, the son of an earl and the older brother to a girl who's noble. Heart shines throughout the story. His new body settles and fresh memories knit themselves into his past, making his old life feel like a distant dream. Rather than a place he actually lived, he recalls everything Gallant knew from the moment he first woke up here. He is 8 years old, alive, and his father is crushing the breath out of him with fierce relief. Father, he manages, I am fine, patting his back with weak arms that still feel half made of seawater, and Earl Selwyn finally pulls back to look At him, his usual mask of composed Stormlander wisdom has fallen completely. Off his face, now, there is only the wild-eyed joy of a father, who had been preparing himself in the span of an hour to bury his second son. Feeling the chill in his son's body, he tears off his black velvet cloak. Bundling him inside it, "We are going back to the castle," he orders, meaning to take him straight to Meister Harmon. "Wait, father," he says, and they look. At him, the steward Claude with his receding hair and anxious balding. Pate the guards in boiled leather, and his little sister with her tear-streaked, freckled face. Without explaining, he steps toward the reef, where the tide had spat him up, searching through the seawater and gravel for what he half-remembered carrying ashore. Suddenly, a faint, clear shimmer appears deep beneath. He closes his hand around it and lifts it. Everyone freezes in absolute disbelief. Look closely. This is definitely no ordinary sword. It is a weapon of otherworldly forge, its whole length glowing with soft cyan light. Like the breath of the deep sea drawn up into steel, the light is not dazzling but gentle, rippling like the surface of the Bay of Tarfon. A moonlit night, along both edges of the blade run thin orange red lines, exactly like that sliver of horizon before the sun rises from the sea. The crossguard and hilt are made of a gray-white material, as warm as ivory, and cold as metal, with an oval blue-black gemstone set at the pommel. Ringed by tiny inscriptions, the whole sword in his 8-year-old hand weighs absolutely nothing, feeling like morning light, though he is holding it. For the very first time, every man on that beach already knows its legend. Name, it whispers directly into their minds like a soft breath. Oathkeeper, it is a legendary holy sword, one of the knights whispers in awe. The legendary sword of morning light, the young lord actually found it. One after another, the armored soldiers drop to their knees on the ground. Their heavy weapons clatter against wet stone as they look at him. They stare with a dangerous, feverish devotion. Nearby, young Brienne, face still streaked with tears, points at the sword in his hand, babbling to their father. Earl Selwyn's mouth hangs wide open in absolute disbelief. Beside him, Stuart Claude looks at his master, shock slowly melting into a wild, wordless joy. Now look closely, while everyone stares at the glowing blade he holds. Something entirely invisible to them occurs. A glowing panel appears before his eyes, shimmering with translucent blue light, floating in the air like a window. It lists his stats: Gallant Terath, no title, with strength at 3.12, agility at 4.1, spirit at 12.8, and magic blank. His skills show swordsmanship at 3%, archery at 7, riding at 4, language at 27, swimming at 29. Next are legendary bloodlines. 3 in total, starting with Evenstar at just 3% development. Both Targaryen and Storm King bloodlines sit at 0, his legendary weapon Oathkeeper is gold tier and already maxed, no upgrades possible. Pets are none, his judgment points are currently sitting at 0. Gray plus signs sit beside the lines, with a blank judgment counter below. This is his golden finger system, so he tries calling out to it mentally, hoping for an immediate response, just like those classic stories always described. But silence greets him. This strange interface has no conscious voice to speak with. Those gray plus signs mean he cannot upgrade anything just yet. The judgment counter remains completely blank, staring right back at him. To boost his stats, he needs to earn those elusive points first. But how does he actually get them? The screen offers no clues. A slight headache sets in, the classic annoyance of a guideless transmigration. He wonders if this system is a perk of his crossing over, or if it was somehow pulled from the dark depths along with the sword. He looks back at the panel. That legendary golden weapon, Oathkeeper, is the only entry that is already sitting at the absolute maximum tier. The blade itself draws his focus once more. He examines the pommel inscriptions, watching as the foreign letters form clear words meant for him alone. This is indeed Oathkeeper, the mythical blade bestowed by the maiden. In the ancient legends of the faith, given to Galadon of Morn, the myth is real and the weapon belongs to him. Honestly, who could hide his sheer excitement? What knight in Westeros does not dream of this? Great houses base their entire pride on a single heirloom of Valyrian steel. Yet here he is, an 8-year-old boy soaked in seawater, holding a blade that completely outshines Valyrian steel like the morning sun over a candle. He lifts it to test the balance. It slices through the air effortlessly, perfectly suited to his small, inherited body, as if designed just for him. To settle any lingering doubt, he executes a smooth backswing. Galadin clips a protruding reef beside him and a head-sized chunk of stone. Slides cleanly off into the water, showing a cut as smooth as a mirror. Saying it cuts iron like butter would not even begin to describe it. Earl Selwyn asks if this is Oathkeeper, his voice trembling and raspy. He had named his son Galadin to bless him with a legendary hero's name, never imagining his eldest son would actually find the long-lost Holy Sword. It had been lost since the Dawn Age. Now, Selwyn reaches to touch the blade. On the instant his fingertip brushes the steel, he yanks it back with a hiss. As if struck by lightning, a bright red burn flares on his fingertip. A faint thread of smoke curling upward. Talk about some serious mystical power. The Holy Sword chooses its master, my lord, Claude says quietly. Selwyn shows no displeasure, only a joy far brighter than before. He commands Claude to try, and the steward, Josette, is burned just the same. They exchange looks. He commands every knight and guard to try as well. One by one, swallowing their fear, they reach out and recoil in pain. They suffer burns that will soon become small, permanent honors on their hands. Yet not a single man looks angry. They all look deeply reverent. They never expected their young masters tumble into the sea to bring this back. Today, Tarth's lost holy sword returns to the world of living men. Galadin plants Oathkeeper into the sand and pulls it free once more. Men climb back up, and Earl Selwyn finally lets his smile blossom. It is a look of pure wonder. Come, he says, back to the castle. The guards roar their assent. Selwyn takes a leather sheath from a guard and wraps the blade, scooping his young son Galadin onto the horse with him. Steward Claude takes young Brienne, and the whole company turns away from the rising tide. They ride hard for Evenfall Hall, which sits proudly on a western hill. It looks across the Bay of Tarth towards Storm's End on the opposite shore. The ancient castle is built of weathered gray stone, thick and rugged. Its walls are worn by sea winds, and at its center rises the tower. The tall Duskstar Tower flies the banner of a yellow sun and blue moon. That rusted, faded banner marks 1,000 years of their family holding this ground. As they ride into the courtyard, old Meister Harmon is already waiting. Gowned in gray with his heavy chain, he reports that fires are lit. He welcomes the Earl, but has no idea about the incredible weapon they carry. He cannot understand why every face in the company is lit with burning fervor. No one is bothering to hide their joy inside the great hall. By the fire, Claude and the Meister quickly strip Galadin's freezing, wet clothes away. They bundle him in a thick wool blanket, setting him near the hearth. Claude's breath catches when he sees Galadin set Oathkeeper on the cold flagstones. Meister Harmon eyes the strange, beautiful longsword, but decides to ask later. He puts a bowl of meatball soup with cinnamon and dates into Galadin's hands. He gently makes him sip it slowly. Meanwhile, little Brienne keeps adding kindling. In her 4-year-old mind, a brighter fire will make her brother heal faster. Galadin cannot help but smile, pulling his sweet little sister into his arms. She is nothing like the cold, distant brother of his previous life. She burrows trustingly inside the wool blanket, leaving only her freckled nose and her 2 bright sapphire eyes peek out at him from the fold. This sudden closeness cracks something open in Galan that he thought was shut for good. Earl Selwyn watches them across the hearth as a slow, deep smile of relief spreads across his face. Then his eyes fall on Oathkeeper, and he steels himself, reaching forward. This time, Selwyn has learned his lesson, grabbing only the leather sheath. Even so, the sheer weight surprises him, 30 or 40 pounds, twice the weight of an ordinary 2-handed sword, forcing him to use both hands to hold it. Level, yet at Morn's point, Galan had swung this very blade easily with one hand. The sword adjusts its weight for its master, turning leaden in any other hand. Selwyn examines the inscription at the pommel. Oathkeeper. He sets the blade down very carefully and exhales, staring for a long while at the family banner hanging above the hearth, 2 suns on a red field and 2 moons on blue. The sigil of House Tarth. House Stark has been glorious. House Baratheon has been glorious. House Lannister, House Gardner, even the upstart Tyrells of Highgarden all have had their glory, but get this, House Tarth has not left any real mark on the history of Westeros for a very long time. The head of House Tarth was once honored with the title of Evenstar. No one calls them that any longer. The end of dusk, Selwyn whispers quietly under his breath, the family motto coming to him unbidden, the coming of dawn. He looks across the hearth at Galan cradling Brienne, allowing himself for the very first time to think that perhaps Galan is the dawn of House Tarth, when the fire has settled and Brienne has dozed off against Galen's chest. Selwyn turns his head toward his son. Again, Galen, he says, his voice carrying a careful edge. Why did you jump? Into the sea and into that cave without thinking. Was it old Fex's son who led? Galen understands at once what his father is really asking. No, father, he says. Shaking his head, old Fex's son did nothing. You do not need to trouble him. In his borrowed memories, the fisher boy had begged the old Galen not to go in. Earl Selwyn's eyes hold his for a moment longer, weighing whether some scheme might have been at work against the heir of House Tarth, but in the end he believes him. Then why were you so certain the holy sword was in the cave? Selwyn asks. Galen thinks for a moment, offering a useful little lie he heard a kind of call from the shore, a call from the holy sword. Selwyn's eyes widen, his chest heaves, and Galen nods gravely. After all, he does not know how strangely he will behave in the days ahead, so there is no harm in laying down this early suggestion that the sword speaks to him in ways no other man can understand. Earl Selwyn fills in the rest of the picture for himself, that his son might be marked for some great responsibility, that he might be a man favored by the seven. The conviction settles on him the way snow settles on a roof by its own slow weight. He will not admit it, but Galen sees in his rapid breath, behind his composure, that he has taken on in a single afternoon a hope so heavy it has begun to frighten him. Galen does not feel any of that weight. Quietly teasing his sister, who has begun to drowse, pinching one of her plump, warm hands with his thumb and forefinger. 4-year-old Brienne is sturdy and warm and thoroughly cute. Trust me, there is no hint yet of that future Tomiter warrior. She will bypass any awkward growth or crooked teeth 10 years from now. Her sapphire eyes shine just as the books describe them, and her freckles rest exactly where they belong. Galen quickly realizes he is growing incredibly fond of his new little sister. Already he recalls how the original story labeled her ugly, mostly pointing to her towering height, crooked teeth, and imposing physical strength, rather than her facial structure. Any bad bone structure, with a bit of quiet care, he believes this little girl can easily grow into a tall, exceptionally strong woman who will also be unmistakably handsome. Proper skin care, straight teeth, and the right balance of physical training should do it. He files these mental notes away. He has nothing but time. Reopening the mental status panel, he reviews the details slowly while his sister sleeps against his chest. Strength is 3.12, agility 4.1. He guesses an average adult is around 10. His spirit sits at 12.8, which is absurdly high for an 8-year-old. The only explanation is the soul of a transmigrator stacked on top of a child's memories. The skill percentages clearly match what remains in Galen's actual memories, covering riding and archery and swordsmanship. It is real progress, but just starting. The common tongue is 27%, since he has only spent 8 years reading and writing it. Swimming is at 29%, natural for a boy raised on an island, he assumes. 100% represents absolute mastery. Next are the bloodlines, which bring massive surprises. He holds 3 legendary bloodlines, and the system panel labels them all as undeveloped. The blood of the Evenstar runs through House Tarth back to the Dawn Age. This explains why Brienne grows so tall and strong in the books, thanks to a sliver of Evenstar awakening inside her. The Storm King bloodline traces back to House Durrandon, the ancient rulers of Storm's End who reigned before House Targaryen. House Tarth and House Durrandon intermarried for centuries, a trait that still shows in their hair. The men of House Tarth, much like House Baratheon, carry the thick black hair of the Storm Kings, yet Brienne, like an Evenstar daughter, inherits the pale golden hair of her mother's people. Those 2 bloodlines were expected. The third, the Targaryen lineage, is the true shocker. House Baratheon, ruling the Stormlands for 2 centuries, married into House Tarth quite often. The Baratheons themselves carry the ancient blood of old Valyria, diluted but real, through those historical Baratheon-Tarth marriages. Thread of Targaryen blood has been woven into Galen, though barely noticeable. For most of his house, this connection is meaningless. For him, it means he can assign points to it. That bloodline matters more than he wants to admit. Allocating enough system points to bolster his Targaryen blood would grant him time, fire immunity, and the power to command dragons. Dragons are not optional in this world. Having a dragon and lacking one are entirely different realities. That is the exact bloodline he is hungriest to feed. But not yet. He still has no idea how to earn those points. Just watch. The steward's voice suddenly breaks his concentration. telling him that the warm bath is ready. Claude has appeared right at his elbow, urging him to go rest. He wears a soft smile, his bald head reflecting a faint flush from the firelight. Galen looks down and realizes that even though he is dry, the salt remains gritty. Across his skin, he gently lifts Brienne onto his father's lap and her old sellsword settles her with weary affection, telling him to go get some rest. He then follows Claude up the cold, spiral granite stairs of the Duskstar Tower, where iron oil lamps along the wall cast long, flickering shadows onto the stone as the muffled sound of the sea drifts through. High small window, his room, 5th floor, behind a heavy oak door. Carved with a yellow sun and blue moon, inside hangs a faded tapestry of Galadin. Standing hand in hand with the Maiden of the Seven, a thick wool rug, a tub, already steaming with hot water and lavender petals floating on the surface. A fire burns. Nearby, a small adjoining door sits slightly ajar, leading to the maid's narrow alcove. A girl of 13 or 14 with chestnut hair in a ponytail rises from the tub side and curtsies. Galena, the maid his late mother had personally chosen for him, has served him since he was small enough to need her help dressing. She helps him out of his salt-stiff clothes with the easy skill of long habit. Splish, he sinks into the warm water smelling of rosemary. Feeling his body give up the last of its tension, he tells her she can go. She bows away into her alcove. He leans his head back against the rim of the tub, closes his eyes and thinks he has arrived far too early by Meister Armin's reckoning. The year is 275 after the conquest. Mad King Ares still sits the Iron Throne. Ned Stark is 12, only 4 years older than him. The tourney at Harrenhal is more than a decade away, and the war comes even later. He is, for the moment, in the same generation as Jaime Lannister, Ned Stark, and Petter Baelish. All of them are still children. Wild right, he thinks, eyes closed. In the corner of his mouth lifts in a small smile. By the time the real plot begins, he will be around 30, in his prime, and he will have spent 20 years getting ready. He is the heir to Evenfall Hall, the legitimate son of a lord. Tarth is not the wealthiest fief on the eastern coast. That title belongs to the Arbor, but Tarth has nearly 150,000 people. 3 towns and 20 or 30 villages, mountains and grasslands and forests, with a fleet of more than a dozen trading ships that can easily turn to war. With one word, his father can muster 20 knights and 3,000 soldiers. Tarth lies northeast of Storm's End, acting as the natural shield of House Baratheon. It is the closest island in Westeros to the continent of Essos, 5 days' sail to Pentos, 3 to Tyrosh, which is faster than sailing to King's Landing, a truly perfect place to start. Honestly, who could find a fault with it, with his transmigrator knowledge? 20 years of patient work, a brother who is the heir, and a sister like Brienne, along with 3 bloodlines, a holy sword, and a system panel. Promising growth in exchange for judgment, he can accomplish an incredible amount. When the War of the Usurper comes, House Tarth can easily claim its share of the spoils for backing Robert. Soaking in the steam, he quietly begins to plan. Galena's voice reaches him through the alcove door, asking if he wants more hot water. He rises from the tub instead, water sliding off him, telling her he is finished. She drapes a soft, warm towel around him, drying him as she always dries him. He is 8 and completely undeveloped, so refusing her now would be a bit strange. She hands him underclothes and a black silk sleeping. She rings a small bell, and a few sturdy serving women arrive to carry the tub and its cooling water away. Galena neatly tidies the bed once more and bows herself away. He is not ready to sleep yet, with the afternoon light still bright. He pushes the window wide open, looking out at the deep blue sea and the pale blue horizon. He looks down at Sapphire Port, watching the merchant ships as they dock. Fishing boats are returning home, past the red roofs of Sapphire Town. Beyond, and green pastures above the cliffs. Seriously, this place is stunning. The walls of Evenfall Hall stand 20 feet high, built of gray granite 10 feet thick at the base, crowned by a low crenellated parapet with iron arrow slits, and at the southeast a half-collapsed watchtower leans against the wall, its ruin overgrown with stubborn sea rocket. Duskstar Tower itself stands 100 feet tall, serving as a beacon in the fog for passing merchant ships. Other towers, kitchens, armories, and storerooms flank the keep under weathered bluish-black tiles with white smoke rising from 2 square chimneys. The courtyard below is paved with gravel and crushed seashells, neat as a hearth. It looks nothing like the muddy yards of Winterfell he remembers from television. Behind the castle, ancient trees mark the godswood The boy he once was used to play, 1,000 years of careful Tarth holding built. A castle that is both beautiful and stubborn, whatever he had imagined of. Medieval life, this is far better. Eventually, he closes the window and climbs into bed, and surprisingly, he sleeps more soundly than he ever had back on Earth. Perhaps 3 legendary bloodlines really do grant the gift of peaceful rest. In the morning, he wakes feeling rested in a way he never remembers feeling before. Galena calls out a cheerful good morning from her alcove, bringing him hot water and toiletries. The toothbrush in the cup is only a chewed twig the length of a chopstick, its top frayed into rough bristles. He dips it in salt, just like the previous Galen used to do, and cleans his teeth as best he can, though his gums sting and bleed a little for the trouble. He must invent a proper toothbrush. Trust me, his work has only just begun. Great many other small things. The thought makes him smile as Galena dresses him. Close-fitting linen shirt, a dark gray wool and silk robe embroidered with antique gold thread patterns and fastened with 3 ebony buttons, and plain black linen trousers tied below the knee with leather cords, and high cowhide boots for the rocky island ground. Around his waist, she buckles a tanned cowhide belt with a gold buckle and wave-carved tail. This outfit marks him as a noble. At a glance, a commoner could not afford this even after a year of work. In his past life, he had owned only 1 or 2 sets of clothes, replaced only when worn completely through, and he had refused every girl who confessed to him in school because he was so ashamed of how he dressed. Now he stands before a brass mirror in the south corner of his bedroom, looking at the boy he has become. Short, dark, slightly curly hair with messy ends, the black hair of the Storm Kings, the same black as his father's. He has clear blue eyes ringed faintly with light gray near the pupil, like a sea shrouded in morning mist, pale skin with scattered freckles on either side of his straight nose, long slender brows, and a chin that is firm but not yet hard, nearly 5 feet tall, far above what an 8-year-old should be able to manage this. He looks at his reflection in the polished brass. Smiling to himself, he thinks this face actually suits the future master of the legendary sword Oathkeeper. He leaves his bedroom, walking down the winding spiral stairs toward the massive great hall. Maids are already busy setting up breakfast, bowing and happily greeting their young master. There is a newfound spark in their eyes. Honestly, you can't blame them for being excited. Word of the legendary Holy Sword has clearly spread through the entire castle. Steward Claude informs him that his father rode off to Sapphire Town last night. He has not returned yet, and his sister Brianna is still fast asleep, so he sits down. Taking his usual seat, he finds a massive feast waiting right in front of him. There are apples, sweet blood oranges, and roasted pumpkin chunks to balance out the richness. The cooking is simple compared to his past life, but ingredients are top tier. He happily devours the meal. Then, instead of waiting for his sister to wake up, he climbs up to the 3rd floor of the neighboring tower to find Meister Eamon. The old scholar teaches among his ravens, greeting the boy warmly. He was the one who heard about the holy sword last night, and he barely slept. That pure excitement kept him awake. Now, the heavy metal chain across his robes rattles. His collar is incredibly heavy, holding bronze for astronomy and black iron. Silver represents medicine, gold is for math, and platinum is for ancient languages. He has mastered Valyrian, with a tiny copper link at the very end for navigation. The old man has faithfully served House Tarth for 30 long years. At 60 years old, his hair is streaked with gray, but his eyes remain incredibly sharp. He kindly suggests the boy should rest after yesterday's near drowning, but he refuses. The boy insists that knowledge is just as important as steel, which absolutely delights the old Meister. Very few noble boys choose quiet books over riding and hunting. Seeing the chosen wielder of a legendary holy sword choose quiet study is a pure joy. To start, the Meister tests him on heraldry, asking about House Royce of the Vale. The boy answers within 2 seconds. They rule Runestone, north of Goldtown along the narrow sea. Their sigil features pebbles and ancient runes on an orange field, with the words, "We remember." And without even being asked, he confidently lists off even more history about this ancient family. They are one of the few Vale houses descended from the legendary First Men. Their Bronze Age rulers were kings, and they once wielded a Valyrian steel sword. Their legendary ancestral sword, called Lament, was tragically lost during the bloody dance of the dragons. But they still keep ancient bronze armor covered in protective runes. And get this, as he speaks, he realizes his memory is sharper than ever. His mind has sharpened into something incredibly reliable. easily holding onto every single detail of his past. The old Meister is deeply impressed and quickly asks him about House Valerian. Driftmark their silver seahorse on sea green and their motto, the old, the true, the brave. He adds that the Valerian family actually settled on Driftmark long before the Targaryens arrived. They share classic Valerian traits, even though they were never dragon lords. Because of their legendary naval power, their lord usually serves as the master of ships on the small council. The Meister suddenly stops him, calling out Galen with a proud smile. He proudly declares that the boy has completely mastered heraldry, and it is time for a new lesson. He quickly scribbles down 3 very different options on a piece of parchment and slides it over. The list includes kingdom geography, noble etiquette, and laws of succession. Or medicine and herbalism. After a brief pause, the boy chooses geography. Etiquette and laws can wait. Medicine is only needed in passing, but a transmigrator without a map is just wasting his good fortune. He adds a request, asking if he can take a second course. Of course, the Meister replies. When asked which one, Galen requests Valerian. The Meister's brow lifts. He explains that Valerian is mostly taught to children of House Targaryen. For other Westerosi nobles, it is almost useless since only the free cities use it. Galen offers his lesser reason, explaining that he hears merchants from those cities speaking in the Sapphire Port and is curious about Essos hoping to travel there, the truer reason that one cannot ride a dragon by speaking only the common tongue he keeps to himself. Traveling to the free cities is no bad ambition for a young heir, the Meister nods. Having spent 30 years on Tarth meeting merchants from Essos and the Summer Isles, he believes a journey would broaden the boy. Very well, he says. He agrees to teach both, warning that the condensed lessons will require more study. He unrolls a massive map on the long table, and they prepare to begin. Starting with Westeros, Galen picks it up almost as fast as it is laid down. In his past life, he spent hours staring at electronic maps of these exact same lands. The Meister smiles at his speed, then takes down a slim volume of Valerian poetry to teach him the script and pronunciation through verse. It is not the textbook a normal teacher would choose, but in a world without dictionaries, one teaches what they have. Galen grits his teeth and listens. After 2 incense sticks of study, he quietly checks his system panel. The skill bar does not show the language yet. Below 1%, it does not show languages at all. That is fine, since he has no judgment points to spend and no clue how to earn them. Valerian will come. A maid knocks. She announces that the Lord has returned and requests them. Galen bows to Meister Armin. Armin tells him with a smile that the lesson ends here, and Galen follows the maid down to the great hall where his father waits with a sword in hand. He recognizes the hilt as Oathkeeper, but the crude leather wrap from yesterday is gone. In its place rests a splendid, freshly forged black scabbard. This is where his father went last night, seeking out Byron, the most skilled blacksmith in Sapphire Town, just to have a scabbard hammered out through the night. The faint redness in his father's eyes reveals he has not slept. Galen, the scabbard is ready, the Lord says, offering the sword with both hands. Galen takes it with one hand to examine it. It is black iron, hammered rough. For a solid grip, lined with light pinewood that shows a honey gold grain along the seam, a band of gray sharkskin rests near the throat. Fine silver threads trace across the dark iron and wood, creating a cold gleaming line. It is about 4 feet long from mouth to point. Strangely, the leather clasp is set up for the back, not the hip. Talk about planning ahead. The diagonal shoulder rig fits a small body much better than a hip belt would. At 8 years old, he is not tall enough for a 4-foot sword. But on his back he will wear it perfectly soon enough. He draws it slightly. The clear, cool light of the blade flares, a soft, pleased metallic note hums as a third of the breathtaking blade leaves the sheath. Every face in the hall locks onto the weapon, breathing shallower. The blade is so beautiful that simply staring at it can captivate anyone. Galen sheathes the weapon and weighs the heavy scabbard in his small hand. It is at the very limit of what a child of his size can comfortably carry. He had noticed his father straining when he handed it over, but to him it feels completely weightless. Oathkeeper has its own opinion of the proper way to treat its master and adjusts itself. No wonder the panel calls its quality maxed and unprovable. He thanks his father, and Earl Selwyn nods back at him with the smile of a father who is still deeply grateful that his son is alive. To thank him, Brienne comes running in then, sand on her hands and her bare feet throwing herself right into his arms. She has been down at the beach building little castles. Selwyn watches her and says Galen, she is 4.5, so tomorrow she should join him in Meister Armin's lessons. Galen nods, she is sturdier and brighter than most girls her age, ready to study the common tongue. Claude is sent to order lunch from the kitchens, and as he leaves Meister Armin hurries in clutching a letter fresh from a raven, telling the Earl that the Queen has borne a healthy boy, named Viserys Targaryen by King Aerys. His father chuckles. After a string of painful miscarriages and tragic stillbirths, the Queen has finally given him a healthy prince. Selwyn thinks the king's mood will improve a little. Galen silently shakes his head, thinking, so it is. Viserys the sleeping dragon. Meister Armin then mentions there is a second letter. Lord Tywin, celebrating the royal birth, plans a massive tourney at Lannisport in 1 month. His father reads it with a frown, refusing to go. Instead, he will have Claude prepare a proper gift for the prince's name day. The Meister nods to leave, but Selwyn bids him stay, sit, and share their meal. There is important news to discuss. Galen sits down with his little sister on his lap, while his father and the Meister lay out the current political map of Westeros. They speak of the growing rift between King Aerys and his hand Lord Tywin, petty disagreements that have festered into public hostility, the upcoming 10th name day of Stannis, second son of Lord Steffan Baratheon, the dwarf son of Lord Tywin, who defied expectation by surviving, now growing up at Casterly Rock. Galen listens. Most of these names are familiar from a past life he cannot mention. For now, they are only children. Through this high-level discussion, he begins to understand why the monarch is called the Mad King, not just for his cruelty but for the sheer absurdity of his ideas. He once proposed to Lord Rickard Stark of Winterfell that a second wall be built 100 leagues north of the existing structure to claim the land between. Lord Rickard had stood there speechless because absolutely no one had any idea how to build such a monument. Besides, the frozen land was inhabited by 10,000 wildlings, whose displacement would guarantee a massive war. Visiting Sunspear, the king once told the Princess of Dorne that he planned to dig an underground canal through the Red Mountains, channeling water from the rainforests to make the dry Dornish desert bloom with flowers. Hearing these wild tales, Galen nearly chokes on his bread. Laughing, he thinks Aerys and his second son Viserys are cut from the same precise cloth. Viserys' constant talk in the books about waking the dragon must have been learned directly at his father's knee. He notices his father's growing contempt. He makes no effort to hide his feelings for the king, even while carefully praising Lord Tywin. Is Tywin driving the king mad on purpose, or just doing competent service under tough conditions? Galen cannot tell yet. Either way, his administrative skill, military leadership, and political sharp mind are of the highest rank in the 7 kingdoms. After lunch, Brienne and he go for a nap. Sleep helps children grow. Once awake, he slings Oathkeeper across his back and walks down to the godswood behind the castle. There among the ancient trees, a tall, brown-haired man in plate armor stands waiting with his back turned. At the sound of Galen's step, he turns, his sword-scarred face splitting into a wide smile. Sir Goodwin, Master-at-Arms of Evenfall Hall, who placed at the tournament at Highgarden 7 years ago. Stern with the soldiers, he is gentler with Galen. Goodwin calls him Galen, explaining his father wants them to continue their training today. He looks the boy over, checking his color and gait, satisfied that yesterday's near drowning did no lasting harm. Galen makes him laugh by saying any kid on Tarth has swallowed plenty of seawater in his time. Goodwin quickly warns him not to repeat that where his father might hear. Then Goodwin spots the sword on his back, asking if this is the holy weapon found at Morn's Point. Galen draws it in the long afternoon shadows of the godswood, and that clear, cool light flares to life again. Goodwin freezes, whispering that it is truly extraordinary. Being from the Riverlands near Harrenhal, he had heard the others yesterday but kept a slight doubt. Now that doubt is entirely gone. He admits to Galen alone that this sight is even more stirring than Arthur Dane. Unsheathing Dawn, with a shrug and a grin, he refuses to let the boy practice with such a weapon, since even a graze could prove deadly. Galen explains he brought the blade not to spar but to test it. Yesterday it sliced a chunk off a reef without him even noticing. He wants answers, and Goodwin's eyes light up. What true knight wouldn't want to test a holy sword? Goodwin points toward an old dried stump in the godswood, 2 men wide, cut off 2 feet from the ground. Scarred with 100 marks from Galen's past archery practice, he tells him to try Cutting it, Galen grips Oathkeeper with both hands and takes a single swing. A sound like paper tearing rings out, sharp and dry, the top third of. The stump slides off at an angle, thudding onto the moss and kicking up dark dirt. Into the air, leaving a mirror-smooth cut. Goodwin walks over and bends to look. Closely speechless at what he sees. Honestly, can you blame him? Cutting through. A thick, dried stump with a heavy greatsword is exhausting work, normally a blade. Would get stuck just a few inches deep, yet Galen just sliced it clean. Often the weapon felt as though it were merely cutting through cardboard. There was only a split second of resistance before the sword glided right through like smooth silk. To be absolutely sure, he swings again. An even larger chunk slides off. This time meeting almost zero resistance. The massive sword feels like a tiny twig in his hands, and he cannot hide his pure delight. It reminds him, quite ridiculously, of hitting cabbage heads with a stick back when he was on Earth. Goodwin watches him swing, breathing heavily. Then, without saying a single word, he takes off his own steel breastplate and walks over to the practice dummy Galen always uses, strapping the heavy armor tightly in place. He tells him to try that. He asks Goodwin if he is sure, warning him that this plate armor is definitely not cheap. It is worth 2 gold dragons, while a Tarth fisherman earns 20 or 30 silver stags in a year. Goodwin shrugs. To know a sword, one must test it against real armor. He believes Lord Selwyn will cover the cost, which seems fair enough to the young boy. Galadin adjusts his stance, grips the hilt with both hands, and swings with all his might. He pours every ounce of his 8-year-old strength into the strike. Sparks fly with a sharp ring. As the blade stops, he sees the metal plate has been sliced diagonally across the chest. It is sliced 3/4 down, barely held together by the lower hem. Even the wooden dummy underneath is deeply gouged. Any warrior wearing that armor would be dead. He would have been completely gutted. Goodwin looks like he has just witnessed an impossible future. If an 8-year-old boy can do this, the instructor is clearly wondering about the future. What could an 18-year-old achieve, especially while charging on a massive warhorse? Goodwin shakes himself. Galen, this sword truly lives up to its name. It is a holy blade indeed. The boy nods, remembering the legendary 7-pointed star. Galadin of Morn only drew Oathkeeper 3 times in his entire life. Each time was for an incredibly powerful foe, and he suspects there is more to this blade. He notices a faint orange line running along its edge, a sign of hidden magic. He has not learned to summon this magic yet, but he knows his status panel reads 0. Perhaps the deeper power of Oathkeeper requires magic that the wielder himself must supply. After all, the ancient age of heroes was a wild time of magic and deadly monsters. A legendary hero back then would have needed far more than just a sharp blade. But Goodwin will not let this lesson turn into a sermon. He warns Galadin that despite the sword's raw power, he must never completely rely on it. He explains that a knight's strength is never just the sword in his hand. Arthur Dane, without his legendary sword Dawn, is still the greatest fighter in the kingdoms. Even with Oathkeeper, a simple farmer would easily lose to a trained knight. Galadin agrees, telling him the sword is just icing, while he is the actual cake. Goodwin tells him to grab the wooden sword because today's lesson starts now. The training style is remarkably simple. Goodwin never actually spars with the young boy. He has spent 2 years building his students' skills from the foundation up, focusing on grip, core rotation, footwork, and never allowing any bad habits. With a rock-solid foundation, they are now focusing entirely on high-speed precision. 2 months ago, the boy had to stand before the dummy as targets were shouted. Heart, liver, lungs, or hands, he had to whip his wooden blade out instantly. He had to strike the exact spot immediately, and now he can do it instantly. Now they have moved on to an even harder drill involving a full basket of apples. Goodwin stands across from him with sour green apples collected from the local hills. He hurls them forward, and the boy must swing his wooden sword to smash them. He has to knock each fruit clean out of the air. At first, he missed every single throw. He got hit in the face several times until his pride broke and he learned to track. Now he successfully hits 1 out of 3, even with Goodwin throwing at 70% strength. Once he can hit every single apple, Goodwin promises to switch to a smaller target. He will throw green dates the size of olives, fast, highly accurate, and absolutely ruthless. That is the true heart of swordsmanship, and the young boy completely agrees with him. They only stop when the basket is empty and the sun begins to set over the horizon. He takes the empty basket and tells the boy with a smile not to head back inside yet. Earl. Selwyn has asked him to bring Gallant down to the meadow outside Sapphire Town. There will be an execution before sunset. An execution, Gallant mutters, wiping the sweat from his neck with his sleeve. 2 rapists, the guard replies calmly. Gallant nods. In Westeros, rapists are hanged or beheaded. His father, like Lord Stark, carries out the sentence with his own hand, partly to hear any final grievances, partly to make plain the Lord's authority. Selwyn has made him watch 2 such executions before. The Lord is already preparing his eldest son to inherit the seat. They mount their horses and ride towards Sapphire Port through the evening. There are 3 towns on Tarth: Sapphire Town, Swordgrass Town, and Seahorse Town. Sapphire Town is the largest because it sits beside Sapphire Port, the island's best harbor. Hangings and beheadings always happen on the meadow just outside the town walls. By the time they arrive, a crowd has gathered. Lord Selwyn's guard, several knights Gallant knows, and 30 or 40 townsfolk. Heads turn at their hoofbeats. The cry goes up for young Master Gallant, and a path is quickly cleared. The hum of conversation thickens when they spot the massive sword at his back. The news has had only a day and a half to spread, but on an island this size, that is plenty. The small folk are already whispering that Gallant Tarth, who shares his name with Galladon of Morn, has found Oathkeeper at Morn's Point. Perhaps the young master is that legendary hero reborn. Within another half a month, every soul on Tarth will know it. He will be more than just an heir, a name spoken. In pure awe, greeting his father, Gallant dismounts. Selwyn stands in the center of the field, with both hands resting on the cross-piece of a heavy greatsword, wearing black leather gloves, his face solemn. He smiles only when he sees his son. In front of him kneel 2 bound men, both looking utterly wretched. One is thin and yellow-haired, and limp, his head bowed in quiet resignation. The other is bald, burly, and scarred, with half an ear missing, his eyes savage and fixed on the Lord. Selwyn wastes no further time. He draws the greatsword from the earth and looks down at the yellow-haired man, demanding to know if Brass, son of Glyn, has any words in his defense. Brass merely mumbles, his pale lips parted as he shakes his head, saying nothing. Lord Selwyn intones the formal sentence. In the name of King Ares II, King of the Andals, the Rhoynar, and the First Men, Lord of the 7 kingdoms and protector of the realm, I, Selwyn of House Tarth, Lord of Tarth, sentence you to die. And at the very last word, the blade comes down. Clean, a wet crunch, the head leaves the body. Blood sprays and the head hits the ground. Gallant's heart skips just once. No sickness, no urge to vomit. He feels steady. Goodwin notices the absolute steadiness of his gaze, giving a small, proving nod. So do several knights and the more observant townsfolk. His father glances back at him with satisfaction. He then turns to the second prisoner, asking if Sagaris, son of Modin, has any last words in his defense. The bald man, staring at the headless corpse of his companion, is pushed past fear and into rage. Defend what? He sneers. That woman was so moist I took her. What of it? Who are you to judge me just because you were some damned lord? Sooner or later, the heads of Utaris will be in the dirt, too, and the women in your castle will be ravaged just as she was, and that day is not far off. With a laugh, a brown-haired knight kicks Sagari face first into the dirt, stuffing a filthy rag into his mouth. The father's expression remains stone cold. He raises his heavy greatsword, starting his grim declaration in the name of the Andals, but the boy suddenly cuts him off, telling him to wait. Every single eye in the meadow locks onto him. Father, let me do this, the boy requests, taking a bold step forward with a clean metallic ring. He draws Oathkeeper from his back. The cyan glow of the blade and its orange edge speak louder than any 8-year-old voice ever could. His request might sound like childish bravado to the hardened men around him, but a sudden realization has flashed through his mind. His system panel needs judgment points, and executing this criminal has to be the key. He stares intently down at the prisoner kneeling before his father. You, the Lord mutters, wearing a look of shock, though he slowly lowers his massive weapon. For the second time, he decides to let his young son test his limits. Any other lord would have beaten a child for such insane disrespect. Instead, he just steps back with a silent nod, giving up his execution spot. The meadow grows deathly still. The boy stands before the bald prisoner, gripping Oathkeeper with both hands. He rests the glowing steel against the man's neck. Speaking in the most solemn tone his small body can manage, Sagari, your crimes are completely unforgivable, in the name of the light. He sentences him to death. Without a single moment of hesitation, he raises Oathkeeper high and swings it down. Cyan and bright orange light flash together. Humming with a strange, clean metallic sound, Sagari's head is instantly severed, rolling away in the dirt, but strangely, there is absolutely no blood. The wound is completely cauterized and charred, with a thin curl of smoke rising from the stump alongside a faint sizzling sound. The crowd stands completely frozen. The strike felt incredibly light, as easy as slicing through a thin rope. Taking a life for the very first time does not even shake him. His mind is entirely focused on his system interface. He quickly pulls it up. Galantar's Strength 3.12, Agility 4.1, Spirit 12.8. Skills and bloodlines remain unchanged. No legendary pet, but then he sees it. 2 judgment points. His chest tightens. His theory was absolutely spot on. This is how he gains power. He is not sure if any kill works, or only legal executions, but the main system rule is finally clear. He closes the holographic panel without spending them. An 8-year-old child cannot just celebrate after severing a head, no matter how thrilled he feels. Gazing down at the fresh, headless corpse, he feels only a mild, passing distaste. A human body is not much different from a butchered beast in the end. Just cold meat, blood, and quiet muscle. The gore from spilled intestines is what novels and games warned him about, but there is none of that here. You did incredibly well, his father says, stepping over to rest a hand on his shoulder. The Lord assumes his son acted purely out of righteous anger, delivering a swift and clean punishment to a criminal who insulted their name. He highly approves. He never expected an 8-year-old child to hold such terrifying resolve, when most highborn kids would just freeze up in fear. He looks out at the gathered small folk. None of them have dispersed yet. They stare at him and his bloodied sword as a low chant begins to ripple through the crowd. Galadin of Morny, the whisper swells until nearly 40 voices join in the prayer. It sounds like a desperate prayer, leaving him completely unsure of how to react. Offering a faint, dignified smile, he waves and softly tells his father it is time to go home. Lord Tarth nods, and together they ride back to Evenfall Hall under the heavy silence. Excusing himself to bathe, Galadin hurries up the spiral stairs where his maid, Galena, has prepared hot water. Sending her away to her alcove, he slowly sinks into the soothing warmth of the tub. Summoning his system panel, he spots his 2 unused judgment points waiting there. He reviews his options, noticing the magic stat is locked and completely unspendable. His legendary weapon is already maxed out, and he has no legendary pet to upgrade. That leaves physical stats and his bloodlines as the only viable choices. He desperately wants to invest in the Targaryen bloodline, but hesitation holds him back. And honestly, without knowing what that upgrade actually does, he risks wasting his precious points. To be safe, he decides to boost a basic attribute where the change will be instant. It comes down to a simple choice, now strength or agility. Taking a slow breath, he chooses strength for the most obvious physical boost. He mentally clicks the small plus sign next to his strength stat twice. 2 golden plus signs flicker before his eyes, and his judgment points drop to 0. His strength stat ticks up from 3.12 to 3.14, triggering a sudden wave of heat. The warmth surges through every part of his body, far hotter than the bath water, but completely tolerable. It feels as if his blood is boiling, without actually burning his veins. The energy settles outward, sinking deep into his muscles, cells, and finally his bones. A long, soft sigh of pure relief escapes his lips without his permission. From the alcove, Galena asks worriedly if the bath water is too hot. He assures her he is fine, blaming the sigh on the exhausting afternoon training session. She relaxes, but the brief interruption immediately breaks his focus. By the time he responds, the warmth has fully dissolved into his body. The transformation is complete. Gripping the edge of the tub, he tests his new strength. He has not become a god, but the physical difference is absolutely undeniable. All his afternoon soreness has vanished. Those fraction points of strength just saved him a week of grueling training. Just like that, the entire trajectory of his future begins to shift. Normal air takes a decade of hard work to grow from strength 3 to 4. That amounts to less than 0.002 per day. He just bypassed over a week of brutal physical labor in an instant. The potential here is absolutely massive, but get this, so is the catch. He must secure more judgment points, or this progress will dry up completely. His thoughts drift back to the prisoner, his father executed before he could intervene. A wasted opportunity, 2 precious points lost forever. He has to do better. He must convince his father to let him handle all future executions. Dressing quickly with Galena's assistance, Galadin heads down to the main hall. There, his father is playing with young Brienne in front of the hearth. She beams with joy upon seeing him, reaching out her tiny arms and calling him brother. Galadin walks over and lifts her up. She is growing remarkably fast, but his new strength makes it effortless. He lifts her up. She is heavier than a season ago and growing fast, but his newfound strength holds Brienne easily. His father teases, asking if she is getting heavier. The Lord of Tarth is faintly puzzled, seeing that Brienne is plainly growing much faster than other girls. Meister Armin always said she would grow incredibly tall, and that is quickly turning into an undeniable fact, Galen tells him. She feels light as a feather, gently pinching her cheek because she hates being called heavy. The sensitive little girl just closes her eyes and throws her father a smug, sidelong look. He laughs, telling Claude to have the servants bring dinner. Over the meal, the Lord asks his son how things felt today, and Galen replies that it was good before pausing, slowly admitting he felt a strange kind of power. When asked what he means, Galen explains he felt Oathkeeper was excited. His father gapes in pure shock, instantly calling out to Claude without looking away from his son, ordering him to take Brienne to the kitchens. Claude understands. Immediately scooping the little girl out of the Lord's arms, she goes reluctantly. Though the promise of kitchen treats is far too tempting to resist, so she lets herself be led away. Once they are entirely alone in the hall, his father leans forward, demanding to know what Galen means. The boy explains that after he slew the bandit, the sword seemed pleased, actually making him stronger, not by a massive amount, but it was undeniable. Galen only shares what is necessary. His father is his strongest ally and ruler of the island, and working together will take them much further than working alone. The Lord stares at his son, his chest heaving as he processes the claim. He half believes the boy already. Galen has a dead serious look, with absolutely no reason to make up a lie. After all, Oathkeeper is a sacred blade, gifted by the Maiden of the Seven. If any legendary weapon could possess such power, it would certainly be this one. Gaining strength by defeating evil is legendary. The Lord wonders if his son could become a hero like Galadin of old, bringing a glorious rise to House Tarth. He pulls his thoughts together and tells Galen that they will go somewhere after dinner. Galen asks where they could possibly go since it is already pitch black. The Lord promises to test his claims, and Galen already knows exactly where they are headed. Once dinner ends, Brienne returns riding happily on Claude's hip with a sweet blueberry tart gripped tightly in her hand. Her nurse puts her to bed with a bedtime story. Dismissing the servants, his father grabs 2 torches and guides Galen through the cold courtyard toward the dark, lonely southeast tower. Claude softly asks where they are heading so late at night, but Galen's father only orders him to carry the flame. Claude knows better than to ask questions. He knows his master's quiet temper, and if the Lord chooses silence, he simply obeys without another word. Watching this quick exchange, Galen feels a deep respect for his father. Claude is the most trusted helper in the entire household. Yet he is kept completely in the dark. It is not out of distrust, but rather because the fewer minds holding a dangerous secret, the safer it remains. The Lord remains incredibly practical even now, and Galen was definitely right to trust him. While Galen might be the sole heir to Evenfall Hall, he is still only 8 years old and cannot rally an island. His father, however, has absolute power. With a single order, the Lord can take him out to hunt prisoners, and that low tower they are approaching sits right above the dark dungeons, heavily guarded. The guards salute as they approach. One opens the heavy door, leading them down a spiral stone stair. Cold air rises around Galen as he descends. The steps finally open onto a long corridor lit by flickering torches and iron sconces. From a side room, a tall, lean, slightly stooped one-eyed man emerges in a gray robe, his greasy hair in total disarray. The guard behind them bows, takes back his torch, and heads back. Upstairs, this one-eyed man is Moan, a cousin from a branch of House Tarath. He addresses Galen's father, asking why he brought the boy down to this dark, dirty place that might frighten the young master. Galen's father simply shakes his head. He tells Moan that Galen is not so fragile. Galen offers a quiet greeting to his uncle. Moan nods back with surprising softness. He had once been a completely different man. Over a decade ago, during an island raid, his pregnant wife was murdered by brutal pirates, and he was never the same. Galen's father took the field with him, slaughtering that entire pirate crew to a man. Moan lost his eye in that battle. Even with vengeance settled, he never recovered, and honestly, who could blame him? Galen's father, unable to watch his cousin rot, gave him a dark new post. Torturing prisoners in the dungeons of Evenfall Hall seemed to keep him on his feet through the years. He is short and bitter with almost everyone. But with Galen, Moan is gentle, perhaps because Galen is his lord's son. Or perhaps he reminds the broken man of the child his wife once carried. Galen's father commands Moan to bring out the Lysini stowaway from recently, along with Fisher, the monster who slaughtered the merchant Grisha and his entire family. He orders them tightly bound. Moan raises an eyebrow but asks no questions, disappearing into the dark cells before returning with the two shackled prisoners. One is an incredibly pale Lysini with curly, messy hair and a thin frame. His face is frozen in pure terror. The other is a heavily built man, hook-nosed, around 30, named Fisher. Fisher had brutally murdered the merchant Grisha and his family in their own home, escaping with their hidden treasure. He was caught, but the treasure remains missing. Moan has both men gagged with tight rags and extra rope to keep them from disturbing the young master. Galen's father tells Moan to step away, promising to explain this important matter later. Although Moan's curiosity is clearly enormous, the loyal servant simply nods. He heads upstairs to drink with Claude, muttering about casks of golden arbor wine that arrived with a recent caravan. Soon, the dungeon is empty. Only Galen and his father remain. Galen slowly draws Oathkeeper, its blue glow strikingly visible against the dim torchlight. The shadows make the magical blade look even more beautiful. Galen marvels at how shrewdly his father has chosen these test subjects, a helpless Lysini stowaway who likely offended some powerful noble in lies, committing no real crime, and a vicious killer of an entire family. The perfect test. Will this magical sword feed on any death, or only on the souls of the wicked? The helpless Lysini, shivering on the cold floor, lets out a low, terrified groan. Without wasting a single word, Galen steps forward and sweeps Oathkeeper across his neck. He uses only one hand, putting 60 or 70% of his strength into it. A brilliant scion arc cuts the air, decapitating him instantly. There is no blood, only charred edges and a small curl of smoke. Galen opens his system panel. Judgment points 0. He frowns. Absolutely nothing. Only two possibilities remain for this. Judgment requires a true crime, and the Lysine had committed nothing worthy of the sword. The second possibility is a system cooldown, requiring a period of rest before the next execution can award points. Meanwhile, Fisher struggles wildly on the cold ground. His eyes grow increasingly ferocious. He clearly had not expected to be dragged up from the dungeon this late, let alone face an heir's sword. His secret treasure is still safe, yet death seems ready to claim him first. He has no time to speak. It did not work, his father notes calmly. Ignoring the struggle, he shakes his head. His father points at Fisher to try again. His father is not disappointed. Fisher thrashes harder, wild anger in his eyes. Walking over, he raises Oathkeeper, ensuring every single ritual step is followed exactly. He mutters the exact formula from the meadow, in the name of the morning. He sentences him to death and brings the sword down with a loud crack. Fisher's head bounces. To Oathkeeper, flesh is cardboard. He quickly opens his panel. Strength 3.14, Agility 4.1, Spirit 12.8. Judgment points red 0, still absolutely nothing. His head begins to ache painfully. The procedure is correct. He even spoke the formula. Fisher is a proven murderer. He has conclusive evidence, making him worse than the bald criminal from earlier. Why did nothing happen? There must be a cooldown. It is the only explanation. Honestly, this makes complete sense from a design standpoint, because if there were no limits at all, a man with a holy blade could grind his way to invincibility in one afternoon. Even a dragon would fall before him in a single strike. That is impossible. The world cannot allow that. He tells his father it still did not work. His father does not suspect him of lying at dinner, simply asking what the issue is. He suggests a cooldown period is required between uses. His father thinks for a moment, then nods, saying he understands the situation. He promises to bring him back tomorrow, leaving the boy choked up with gratitude. Any other noble lord hearing such a strange story from his young son would be absolutely furious after 2 failed executions, but his father is different. Talk about an incredibly supportive dad. He is already planning their next experiment. They climb the stairs and step into the night. His father instructs the guards to assist Moan with disposing of the bodies once he finally returns. Returning to the Great Hall, he retreats to his chambers to stare in silence. He looks at the inactive 0 on his panel, closing it with quiet resolve. With his father assisting, the answers will surely come. The next morning arrives quickly. Meister Armin conducts lessons as usual, and his sister Brienne joins them this time. She is lively and playful with him, yet remains highly obedient with the tutor. When set aside with a simple picture book, she sits down quietly to read. She reads with serious attention. Once his lessons end, the tutor approaches her. He uses the pictures to teach her initial words of the common tongue. The morning passes quietly. By afternoon, he heads to the Godswood for training. Goodwin teaches both swordsmanship and archery, which is far more fun. His natural talent with a bow is significantly stronger than with a blade. Aiming, drawing, and releasing already feel perfectly standardized in his young body. He only lacks the regular practice required to turn conscious motion into instinct. To his quiet surprise, he begins hitting the target center as training ends. He quietly opens his status screen. His archery skill has gone up from 7 to 8%. It is a small improvement, but a very real one. He wonders if the previous Galen was close to a breakthrough, or if his own strong soul has boosted his talent. Either way, he is pleased. He says goodbye to Goodwin and rushes back to the hall. His father is already waiting, and a maid hands him a warm towel. He quickly wipes the sweat from his face and neck, then follows him back to the southeastern dungeon. The daytime guards are different, and Moen is not at the door. From deep inside the dark cell blocks, he hears the wet wails of a man being tortured. His father calls out a name. After a tense moment, there is a loud metallic clang as Moen emerges, casually wiping blood from his hands with a scrap of burlap. His father orders the guard to bring out 2 prisoners, just like yesterday. The guard asks no questions, quickly returning with 2 heavily bound captives. The first is a sturdy old man with a white beard, once a respected warrior, but now simple fisherman. He held a bitter grudge after an argument with a rival. Out at sea, he kicked that rival straight overboard to drown in the deep water. But his victim survived, washing ashore alive at Storm's End. He sailed back to Tarth and filed a formal complaint with the Lord. Now the old fisherman waits in the dark for his judgment. The second prisoner is a middle-aged woman with a terrified, cruel face. Following her husband's death, she tortured his 7-year-old daughter, forcing her to live and eat in the pigsty, beating her with heavy iron tools until a neighbor finally reported the horror. The Lord locked her up, waiting for the right day to hang her. Moen kicks her onto the filthy stone floor. Though he leaves the old man alone, the elderly fisherman kneels, holding his head high in silence. The Lord waves the guard away, and Moen smiles. Heading back up, he knows his place. Galen draws his golden sword, Oathkeeper, and approaches the woman. In the name of the morning, I sentence you to death, he says calmly. Before bringing the blade down in a single, devastating stroke, her head rolls across the floor. Without wasting a second, he immediately calls up his system panel, Galen Tarth. Strength 3.14, Agility 4.1, Spirit 12.8, Blank Magic. Swordsmanship 3, Archery 8, Riding 4, Common Tongue 27, Swimming 29. Under Legendary Bloodlines, Blood of the Even Star is 3, Targaryen 0, Storm. King 1, his weapon Oathkeeper is maxed gold, no legendary pet. Judgment points 3, he actually got 3 points. His heart leaps with sudden excitement. The cooldown theory is correct. The system rewards him for executing the wicked, and this child abuser gave him 3 points, whereas the rapist only granted him 2. And this is where the system logic gets incredibly interesting. It rewards the execution of heavier guilt. Beside him, the kneeling old fisherman watches with a puzzled frown. He never expected the Lord to bring a young boy down here to act as an executioner, let alone wield a heavy sword with such cold precision. But that old man's stare does not matter to Galen right now. He is completely focused on that new number. A path is finally opening for him, 3 whole judgment points. He stares at the screen, hovering in his mind, feeling a wave of genuine surprise. Yesterday, he only received 2 points for executing the bald rapist. Yet today, after putting an end to a woman who tortured a helpless child, the system grants him 3. Perhaps she carried other hidden sins he never knew about. Beatings, theft, and worse. The Holy Sword weighs her sins completely. This confirms 2 things at once. There is a cooldown of roughly 1 execution per day, and points scale with the depth of the target's sins. Now that he understands the rules, he is in a very great mood. With his father standing right beside him, there is no reason to Wait, he opens the system panel and scans the floating numbers for Galantarth. No title, strength 3.14, agility 4, spirit 12, swordsmanship at 3%, archery at 8, riding at 4, common tongue of Westeros at 27. Swimming at 29, below that lie 3 legendary bloodlines, blood of the even. Star at 3% development, Targaryen bloodline at 0, Storm King bloodline. At 1, the legendary weapon slot shows Oathkeeper gold tier already at maximum quality. Yesterday he spent points on strength to test the system. So this time he wants to experiment elsewhere. He taps the small plus sign. Besides swordsmanship, 3% jumps to 4, and a cool, clear sensation washes through the back of his mind. The principles Sir Godwyn has been drilling into him, the way the wrist should pivot, the line of parry, and the timing of a thrust settle into place with a clarity he never had before. A pulse of warmth flickers through his right wrist and is gone, leaving the joint feeling looser, more responsive, almost as if the bones have been quietly oiled. So 1 judgment point equals 1% of skill proficiency. He decides not to pour the rest into swordsmanship. Skills can be ground out through practice, while basic attributes and bloodlines are far harder to raise alone. He lets his gaze fall on the bloodline section and clicks the plus next to Targaryen bloodline. Soft buzz vibrates through his entire body. Now watch, the panel deducts 1 point. An invisible current rises inside him. Flames seem to leap behind his eyes. His skin goes flushed and hot. For a moment, he sees roaring fires in another place, dragons wheeling on enormous wings against a black sky. The vision shakes him hard enough to make him stumble. Only by driving Oathkeeper's tip into the stone slab is he able to stay upright. His father lurches forward, calling his name, pressing a palm against his forehead, and finding skin that feels almost feverish. Even his eyes, his father tells him later, were rimmed with a strange orange glow. The reaction passes in only a few breaths. He steadies himself against his father's arm, nodding when asked if it worked. The Lord's composure cracks open into a wide, breathless grin he cannot contain, wielding Oathkeeper. To judge the wicked truly does strengthen the wielder. What a gift of a holy sword the Seven have given them. House Tarth is going to rise. He gathers himself quickly, every inch the great lord again, and asks if they should continue. Galantarth shakes his head. It appears to be a once-a-day effect. They already proved that last night, when the second prisoner produced no reaction. His father nods, having suspected as much. His gaze settles on the white-haired old man bound near the wall. That is old Shaven, who served his grandfather in many wars. His father quietly tells Shaven that he originally meant to imprison him briefly and then let him go, but he has heard too much. And so he is deeply sorry. The cold steel slides forward in a single decisive motion, the tip vanishing deep into the old man's back as dark crimson. A red flower blooms across his chest. Old Shaven grunts, looking up at the boy. He looks toward Selwyn, his eyes slowly dimming, never understanding what the Lord and his son are really doing here. The boy watches Selwyn wipe the blade and sheath it without hesitation, nodding quietly to himself. That old man could have been kept for tomorrow's execution, but Selwyn feared a leak in the night and chose not to risk it. Decisive, cold when necessary, together they climb back to the upper floor of the dungeon, where Moan sits cross-legged in the shadows, nursing a flask of wine. Selwyn asks him to dispose of the bodies, and Moan, who can read the situation from the apologetic edge in Selwyn's voice, opens his mouth to ask something, then quickly closes it. He cannot quite understand why Lord Selwyn brings his 8-year-old son down here so often to kill, but the boy's eyes look cold as ever, and Selwyn's face permits no questions. So he only nods. They return to the great hall, and after dinner the boy plays with Brienne for a while before going up to his room. By the window of his bedroom he opens the system panel under starlight. The Targaryen bloodline now sits at 1%. Exactly as he expected. He wonders how much further he will have to push the development before a dragon will recognize him as its master. Before that, legendary fire immunity manifests. The red comet, though, is still a long way off, so there is no point obsessing over the dragon line. Outside of dragon riding, the Targaryen bloodline does not seem to add much to raw combat power. He is more curious about what the blood of the Even Star and the Storm King bloodlines will reveal as their development climbs, since both of those belong to him by inheritance and could carry traits he has not even guessed at. With 1 judgment point still to spend, he taps agility and the warm current returns gently this time, less of a fire and more of a slow loosening. Through every joint, 4 or 5 seconds later it fades, and when he Shadow steps around the room, throwing a few light punches and twists, his body does feel a hair lighter and quicker, though the change is much less dramatic than the strength jump. Agility 4.02, only a tiny gain, but he is not disappointed. Just think about it, the future is wide open. Selwyn will back him with everything he has, and judgment points will keep coming. By 16 or 17 he will rival Rieger, Robert, even Ned, and perhaps catch Arthur Dane himself. By 30, when the War of the Five Kings begins, he will be the strongest man in the Seven Kingdoms, perhaps with a dragon at his command, Galladon of Moor. Reborn plus a dragon rider, why should House Tarth not eventually sit the throne? Selwyn has no idea that his son is already daring to think this far. The next morning he studies with Meister Armin and trains with Sir Godwin as usual. Sir Godwin is openly astonished by the leap in his technique overnight, praising his swordsmanship, his strength and agility, all visibly improved, and Selwyn, watching from the edge of the godswood, exchanges a quiet, knowing smile with him. After training, Selwyn takes him down to the dungeon again. Moan has prepared 2 prisoners and slips deeper into the cells the moment they arrive, professional discretion already in place. The boy judges the first man with a clean stroke, but the panel awards no points. When he asks Selwyn what the man did, he tells him it was poaching. The boy understands at once. In this world, poaching in a lord's forest, a crime punished by death or the wall, yet the system does not see it as a real sin. Just a rule made by lords for lords. Naturally, the Holy Sword refuses to count it. His father chose this prisoner on purpose, a deliberate experiment to test the weapon. He wanted to confirm his theory. Galladon beheads the second prisoner, and his panel score rises 1 single point. Asking about his crime, his father quietly strokes his signet ring. With a strange look, he whispers a single word: incest. This vile man had driven his own son out to sea just to steal his daughter-in-law, even fathering a child by her. Staring at the severed head on the floor, Galladon feels deep disgust and a weary, painful shock. Human cruelty has no limits. The vile monster clearly deserved to die. Apparently, the system registers this crime as a genuine sin, but only a minor one. That explains the single point. His father asks if it works, and Galladon confirms it. Modestly, but yes, his father nods. The rule is finally confirmed. Oathkeeper judges 1 sinner per day, and the worse the sin, the greater the power gained. It makes sense. This is, after all, a legendary weapon granted by the 7 gods. Rewarding the destruction of true evil suits its divine purpose. From here on, his life settles into a peaceful, regular rhythm. Mornings are spent with the Meister studying geography, and Valyrian afternoons practicing with Sir Godwin, and quiet evenings spent judging whatever sinners his father procures. 2 years quickly pass like wind through the sails. On one bright afternoon, Galladon, his sister Brienne, and their father stand at the Sapphire Port docks alongside their guards, watching the horizon for the white sails of the Arin Falcon to round the distant headland. The arriving ship is from Vale, carrying a highly important passenger, Robert Baratheon, the eldest son of House Baratheon, traveling home from the Eyrie to Storm's End. The reason for this journey is a simple event carrying massive future weight. Duke Stefan Baratheon and his wife have given Robert a new baby brother, named Renly Baratheon. Galladon lets that name settle in his mind for a quiet moment. Remembering the famous knight in green armor, this baby will eventually become, feeling the pressure of destiny tightening around him like a drawn bowstring. Talk about heavy anticipation. Always relied on the ancient custom of fostering. Noble sons are sent to grow up in halls of other powerful lords, sometimes as wards to secure vital alliances, other times as honored hostages, and sometimes simply as a deep vote of absolute confidence from one lord to another that a friend can raise his heir better than he can. This unique political bond often carries far more weight than a standard marriage. This is why Lord Stefan Baratheon sent Robert to Jon Arryn at the Eyrie, believing Jon's strong character and wise judgment would guide his son better than his own court at Storm's End. Imagine being Jon Arryn receiving that request, knowing Stefan trusts him so deeply that he is surrendering his future heir, the next great lord of the Stormlands. That is not mere friendship but sworn brotherhood. In turn, young Robert grows up loving Jon Arryn like a second father, perhaps even more, because that crucial childhood time spent together completely reshapes a young boy's heart. When the Great War The usurper eventually erupted. The falcon, the wolf, and the stag stood together like steel, an alliance born from those simple fostering decisions that ultimately swept House Targaryen from the Iron Throne, even after, with Robert crowned king, Jon Arryn becomes Hand, the one man the new ruler will rarely contradict. Bond never breaking. Even later, when Jon Arryn himself lay dying, he was already arranging to send his sickly son to Stannis at Dragonstone for fostering, hoping that grim, upright Stannis would harden the boy where indulgence had softened him. Fostering is the political wisdom of Westeros made flesh. The Robert that Gallant is about to meet has been at the Eyrie since age 8. He is 15 now, meaning 7 full years of Jon Arryn's strict hand on him. House Baratheon and House Arryn are bound tight as iron rings. Gallant cannot help feeling a small pang of regret. If he had been 3 or 4 years older, his father could have sent him to the Eyrie too. Then he, Ned, and Robert could have been the 3 musketeers of the usurpation, raised together, riding together, dying for one another. But he is 4 years younger than Ned and 5 years younger than Robert. Even if he had gone, the age gap would have kept them apart, and Robert would already have been chasing tavern girls while he was still doing letter drills with Meister Eamon, just a pleasant fantasy. Brother, are we going to Storm's End together tomorrow too? Brienne's voice tugs him out of his drifting thoughts. She is 6 now and almost as tall as a second or third grade child from his old life. She wears a light green linen short dress, a small white scarf tied at the collar, and a soft brown cord at the waist. She looks well behaved, but if one studies the lines under the cloth, they can see her body is already broad and dense, sturdier than any little girl her age has any right to be. 2 years have stretched him too. At 10, he is already a clean 5 feet and change, and at the rate he is going, he will sail past 1.8 meters in another few years, perhaps even up toward 2 meters like Brienne is destined for. Today he wears a dark gray linen shirt under a long black overcoat, plain leather belt, slim black trousers, and oathkeeper slung in its scabbard across his back. His features are sharpening, eyes deepening, and his jawline is starting to set. He rests his right hand on Brienne's shoulder, pulls her in, and asks her if she wants to go. She nods so hard her ponytail snaps, eyes bright as glass. He will absolutely take her. For 2 years he has done nothing but train and study. Now it is time to see Storm's End and meet the highborn of Westeros face to face. As they talk, the orange ship draws closer and he can pick out 2 figures on the bow. One is tall with a great head of dense black hair. The other is leaner, narrower in the face. Robert's combat strength was monstrous before wine and women rotted him out. On paper, in his prime, only Arthur Dayne could match the edge of him. Rhaegar was the champion of the Lannisport tourney just 2 years ago, and yet Robert hammered him to death at the Trident. Gallant has to step up in the years to come because he wants to surpass even him. He opens the system panel and lets his eyes drink in 2 years of progress. Gallant Tarath, strength 8.8, agility 9, spirit 15, mana blank. Swordsmanship 21%, archery 33, riding 19, common tongue 41, swimming 4. Valyrian 19%, bloodlines Evenstar 5%, Targaryen 1, Oathkeeper Gold maxed, pet none, judgment points 0. The strength and agility are nearly at adult knight level already, and archery is creeping towards seasoned archer territory. In actual combat, he can probably hold his own against any veteran on Tarath. None of this came from nothing. His father quietly bought criminal slaves out of. He has personally evaluated nearly 80 to 100 people from the free cities of Essos. In just 2 years, by 16, reaching 20 in strength and agility is absolutely possible. His explosive natural growth combined with the system's massive power boosts with attributes that high alongside his swordsmanship, riding, and oathkeeper, placing top 5 in any major tourney in Westeros is highly realistic. His spirit jump from 12.8 to 15.3 was unexpected since he never spent points on it. It was likely just natural growth, while the rest came from studying alongside Meister Armin. The payoff is undeniable. His memory is sharper, his thinking faster, and his reactions are incredibly precise during intense spars. Against Sir Godwyn, he can now last over 30 rounds without taking a single hit, even when Godwyn goes all out. Once Galen secures some extra system points, he intends to upgrade his spirit as well. After all, sheer reaction speed is what decides deadly duels. Suddenly, shouts of drop anchor, hold tight, and throw the lines echo across the busy docks, while sailors shout back and forth. standing on the pier, Galen finally spots the two young lords. One of them possesses a lean, sharp face, light brown curls, and a quiet, reserved expression. The other boy is tall, broad-shouldered, incredibly handsome, and exceptionally well-proportioned. He has deep blue eyes, thick black hair, and a reckless, confident smile that always seems to linger on his lips. The tall one is unmistakably Robert. The leaner one Galen recognizes instantly as Eddard Stark, the ward of John Arryn alongside Robert. The two are as close as brothers. Since Robert is celebrating a new baby brother, Ned naturally joined the journey to share the celebration back at Storm's End. Observing the 14-year-old Ned, Galen feels a strange sensation. The boy is far younger than the Ned he remembers from his past life, looking even more youthful than the actor who once played Robb, and yet that stern, unsmiling expression is already there. It is the signature face that lets him confirm the boy's identity instantly. Robert shouts out, calling to Lord Selwyn after so long. Eagerly asking how he has been, Robert shouts before the gangplank is even lowered. Lord Selwyn shouts back just as warmly, saying that Robert looks incredible, like a fully grown man. The last time Lord Selwyn saw the boy, he was just a tall 12-year-old. Now at 15, he stands 6.5 feet tall and built like a young oak. The moment the lines are secured, Robert simply leaps straight from the deck onto the pier, landing with a massive thud that echoes his raw power better than any formal introduction. Lord Selwyn gives a small, proving nod. John Arryn has clearly built up the boy's strength and noble bearing. Robert grins, thumps his own chest proudly, and waves Ned forward to introduce him. He tells Lord Selwyn that this is his brother Ned, second son of Lord Stark. Ned steps forward, bowing his head a precise, measured fraction, his voice remarkably calm as he greets Lord Selwyn. Returning the courtesy, the Lord of Tarth asks after Lord Rickard's health, warm and deliberately, using the nickname Ned to set a familiar tone. The young Stark replies that his father is well, though kept too busy up north to travel south. Lord Selwyn nods knowingly. The Starks rarely leave their frozen home anyway. Galen steps forward, telling Robert it has been a while since their noble houses have intermarried for generations. They are distantly related and know each other well. Robert laughs, shouting out a greeting to Galen as they Robert laughs, shouting that he heard Galen's name 100 times at the Eyrie. He lets out a booming laugh, slapping a heavy hand on Galen's shoulder. His eyes lock onto the hilt of Oathkeeper rising over Galen's back. Galen shrugs. Helplessly, the legends have spread far, though many nobles still believe House Tarth invented the tale, yet everyone in the Stormlands or along the eastern coast knows it is real, mostly because Galen never went out of his way to hide Oathkeeper. He only draws it for executions, but anyone curious enough to ask gets the truth. Robert eagerly asks if it is the holy sword, begging to see it drawn. His patience is already thinning to the point of fraying, but Galen just shakes his head with a small smile. The man is just as impulsive as history suggested. Fresh off the ship and already begging for the legendary blade, Galen turns to Ned. Offering a polite, formal introduction, Ned greets Galen in return, offering him a rare, slightly awkward smile that sits stiffly on his usual stoic face, which is quite amusing to watch. Robert keeps pestering, throwing a heavy arm across Galen's shoulders despite their height difference. His gaze stays locked on the inscription encircling the blue pommel gem. Galen quietly tells the eager lord to wait until they reach Evenfall Hall, drawing a holy weapon the moment guests step off a boat, would surely earn a scolding from Lord Tarth, who nods his firm approval. Servants bring up horses, and they ride the short distance from the docks to the castle. Robert points out the scenery to Ned with immense pride, while Ned nods. Long clearly impressed, Tarth is far more beautiful and prosperous than the cold, bare northern lands he knows. Inside the great hall, maids have already laid out a grand, welcoming feast on long tables, adorned with flowers and candles. The traditional bread and salt are placed carefully in position. Steward Claude brings the offering forward, and both Robert and Ned partake. Ned takes a small, polite bite of bread, dipping a single finger into the salt to taste. Robert, however, tears off a massive chunk, taking a huge bite and scooping up salt with the bread before washing it all down with some fresh milk. Within seconds, half the loaf is completely gone. Lord Tarth laughs softly, clearly pleased by Robert's blunt nature as he pats his shoulder, sending the guests upstairs to wash and change before the main feast. Once they retire, Lord Tarth turns to Galen, asking for his assessment. Robert is Bold and hardy, rough around the edges but sharp where it counts, with a massive future ahead of him, Galen explains. As for Ned, he is far too honest for the deadly game of politics. If he faces a true schemer, Galen fears the man will be eaten alive. Lord Tarth nods, advising that Robert is his future lord, so he must keep him close. Galen agrees, but his plans run deeper. Robert is not just going to rule the Stormlands, he is destined for the Iron Throne, a grand ascent that will look casual, but is practically preordained. Out of all the major houses, after the Dragon Kings of House Targaryen, only House Baratheon stands tall enough, and only Robert carries the royal blood through his grandmother to make him a ruler the other lords can stomach. Putting Ned or Tywin on that seat would only cause endless civil war. Until the kingdom lay in pieces, Galen's strategy is simple: stand firmly with House Baratheon, build his power during the upcoming war, and wait. Right now, Tarth remains a small house, lacking both reputation and real strength. But to bid for the throne, Galen must grow step by step. Robert is generous, and Tarth is both kin and sworn vassal. Galen must deliver real service. If he does, Robert won't be stingy with rewards. The War of the Five Kings will be Galen's real stage. By the time it begins, he will be in his early 30s, right at his absolute physical peak. His martial power will be overwhelming, his Land's End influence fully prepared, perhaps even possessing a dragon. By then, whether he rises as usurper or rules through a puppet, both paths are wide open. Sudden footsteps on the stairs interrupt his thoughts. Robert and Ned, freshly washed, walk down side by side. Robert asks if Galen will finally show him the sword, eyes already greedy. Ned glances over too. His deep curiosity is less obvious but just as real. He has heard whispers about Oathkeeper from Jon Arryn and Robert for months. He wants to compare it to his own ancestral greatsword, Ice. All right, Galen tells him, but warns him not to handle it. He unsheathes Oathkeeper and lays the scabbard on a long table, then draws the blade, letting it chime. A crisp ringing sound echoes through the hall as a flash of liquid green light flickers across Robert and Ned's faces. Both of them freeze instantly. The blade is simply too beautiful, emitting a pale green glow, the metal flowing like running water or burning flame, completely flawless, showing a faint shimmering orange line along the edge, as if dawn itself had been forged into the steel. The crossguard and ivory hilt are understated, noble, a perfect complement. Robert's mouth hangs open. Ned holds his breath. Both of their gazes are completely drowned in the sword, unable to look away. In this age, where magic has supposedly vanished, seeing Oathkeeper feels like a miracle. Just look at Robert. He even begins to wonder if the divine Seven, whom he has never bothered to worship, might actually exist after all. Robert asks Galen if he can try it, breathing heavily. Ned, normally rigid, lets a quiet flicker of desire cross his face too. Both want to grip that hilt. Galen shakes his head with a small, knowing smile, only repeating his warning once, letting the sword sit on the table for them to inspect. They lean in close. The longer they look, the more naked the envy grows in their eyes. Robert is suddenly conscious that his own custom steel greatsword is completely unimpressive. Ned is also suddenly and very painfully conscious that Ice, his family ancestral greatsword, looks plain compared to this. Robert, true to his impulsive nature, cannot resist. His fingers close on the hilt and he instantly yanks them back with a sharp, painful hiss. Sucking cold air through his teeth, he looks at his charred right fingertips. A bright red burn has appeared, as if he touched a brand. It is lucky he was fast. Galen shakes his head. Words are always wasted on him. Robert scratches his scalp, embarrassed. The rumor that no other hand can hold this sword is true. Ned glances at his own twitching hands, then looks over at Robert's burned fingers. Looks at Galen and his father, and decides not to chance it. Robert asks Galen how he found it, and if it is really the holy sword from the legends of Galad and of Morn, while sucking on his burned fingers. Galen just shrugs, claiming he found it by accident, unsure of its origin. It is sharp. Galen could not care less about anything else. Robert smacks his lips. Damn, I am so jealous. Ned says quietly, Galen, this does not look like Valyrian steel. His eyes are wondering. Galen nods. He is right. Valyrian steel has that dark, almost black metallic luster with a water pattern across the blade. Oathkeeper is different. It is blue-green, glowing faintly, a weapon that, in his past life, would look like a top-tier glowing video game item. Several tiers above Valyrian steel, the system rates it gold, meaning there must be blue and purple tiers above that. Galen tells them Godwin says his sword is sharper than Dawn. They go quiet. Stunned silence. Forget Dawn, neither of them even owns Valyrian steel. House Baratheon is too young to have an inherited blade. And House Stark has ice, but that belongs to Lord Rickard, not them. They are 14 and 15, the age when boys hunger for legendary steel. An Oathkeeper just blew their minds. Just how sharp is it? Robert asks. Cuts through plate armor in one stroke, Galen says. They stare. Robert's expression turns serious and disbelieving. Galen is not joking. 2 years ago, with 3.12 strength, he nearly cleaved plate. At 8.76, he can shear it one-handed with full force. After lunch I will show you, Galen says. Robert cannot wait. The luncheon is sumptuous: roast wild boar with honey, crispy venison leg, drizzled with blackberry sauce, creamy stewed mushrooms and onions, salted herring with sour cream, roasted pigeon stuffed with apples and raisins, and a cheese platter with honeycomb. The wine is just as varied: strong Dornish Golden Arbor wine, Taroshi pear brandy, Myrish green mead, dark Valentine beer. Robert, only 15, has already started drinking and praises every cup of Tarth hospitality. In the middle of the meal, he lifts his goblet. Lord Selwyn, besides visiting you and Galen and Brienne, my father bid me to invite you to Storm's End tomorrow to my brother Renly's name day. If you do not come, my father will surely scold me. Galen nods inwardly. So Robert is rough but attentive to detail. His pleasantries are flawless and his emotional intelligence is high. In the original, he is mostly playing the fool because that is the role that suits him, but he understands everything underneath. Ned, by contrast, really is what he looks like: simple and led in circles by everyone. Selwyn raises his cup with a smile, saying he will gladly bring Galen and Brienne to Storm's End, and the two empty their cups together. Galen drinks a little wine with them. The rule about minors not drinking is nonsense in this world, and besides, his legendary bloodlines and reinforced physique seem to give him a remarkable tolerance. Drinking 3 Roberts under the table is a fair guess. After lunch they rest. As dusk settles, Robert hauls Ned out to find Galen again, demanding the demonstration. Galen takes them, plus a few attendants, to the Godswood with one casual sweep. Oathkeeper cuts a waist-thick deadwood log clean through. The cut is so smooth the wood barely creaks before falling. Robert and Ned stare as if at a ghost. Even with the eerie swinging branches and long grass, they have never seen a single cut do this. Galen walks them up to. This is the massive training post where Gallant first tested his sword, still bearing those slanted cuts. The deep gashes in the wood make them go cold. A single one-handed slash takes a massive, millstone-sized chunk right out of the post. The wood splits along the grain. With a sharp, wet crack, the heavy block slides down into the grass, kicking up dark mud. Both onlookers swallow hard. Suddenly, his boast about plate armor seems entirely real. Robert's breathing turns ragged at the thought of what this weapon is truly capable of. What Oathkeeper would do in a real duel or battlefield. Then comes another thought. Gallant is his future vassal. The realization hits him like cold wine. How about it? Gallant asks them. Do you need to see it on plate armor too? Robert gives a bitter smile. He has already seen enough, he says, pointing across the grass to a rusted suit of plate armor, strapped securely to a nearby training dummy. It is heavily scored with huge gashes across the chest. That is the armor, sir. Godwin discarded 2 years ago and left here for Robert to practice hacking at. It has been rusting in the rain ever since. Ned hurries over to inspect the damage closely and finds the gashes totally unlike anything a normal weapon could ever hope to achieve. Thinking of what would happen if a man were inside that plate, Gallant mentions that it has been a while since he tested it anyway, walking forward casually. With Oathkeeper held in one hand, standing 2 or 3 meters away, he flicks his wrist, reverses his grip and slashes diagonally upward. A deafening clang of metal erupts with a massive shower of bright sparks, and the breastplate snaps on contact. Shattered armor is sliced clean in 2, and the wooden dummy splits right down the middle in the exact same instant, and honestly, who can blame them for gasping? Ned's very worldview wavers. Could this weapon really have been forged by mortal hands? Robert recovers enough to clap his shoulder, declaring him the next legendary sword of the morning. Gallant demurs modestly, which only makes Robert flash a sudden, mischievous grin. He turns toward Ned and asks if they should offer the boy some pointers on his swordsmanship, specifically with wooden swords instead. Ned's lips twitch, fully aware of the playful, borderline bullying setup his friend is proposing. Before Ned can even object, Gallant is already smiling. He says he lacks good partners to train with. Gallant sheathes Oathkeeper, sets it aside, and grabs a battered training sword from the rack. Facing Robert on the grass, Ned gives a resigned sigh and steps in to referee. Robert extends his wooden blade, challenging Gallant to begin the match. Comparing stats, Robert holds a massive advantage in raw strength. At best, Gallant is only even on agility, though his incredible spirit stat still keeps him well in the fight. This will be a real fight. Robert charges forward instantly, swinging with intense speed. His wooden sword whistling straight toward Gallant's chest. Gallant plants his feet and parries cleanly, but the heavy impact sends a sharp tremor straight up his arms. He retreats half a step instead of pushing back, bracing for a second blow. The next clash is even heavier, sending dust and wood shavings flying into the air. From their wooden swords, his palms go numb, forcing him back to buy time. He is quietly amazed. Those strikes match Sir Godwin's adult knight strength. Godwin is a peak knight in his 30s, whereas Robert is a mere 15 and growing. The boy is clearly not even at his full strength yet, which surprises Robert. His peers usually cannot withstand even half his force, and even Ned's hands tremble after sparring. Session, and yet a 10-year-old Gallant is taking it without visible strain. He grins intrigued and tightens his grip with both hands, stepping in with steadier feet to turn his power up to 70%. The next strikes hammer down so heavily the air hums, leaving Gallant's hands feeling numb. The grasset. His feet shivers from the impact as his heels slide back against his will. A final fierce blow even chips a small chunk right off their swords. Gallant retreats 2 paces, shakes out his hand, and looks up at him. According to the system, Robert's strength is already at 15 or higher. Only 15 years old and already boasting 15 strength. In another 5 years, when he reaches 20, what a monster he will be. No wonder he hammers Rieger down. No wonder he crushed Rieger at the Trident. Robert quickly apologizes, asking if Gallant is okay. Robert scratches his head. He really only meant to tease, not to hurt him. But the outcome surprises him, because even though the kid was pushed back, Gallant never lost his stance, cleanly backing away the second an opening appeared. Such strength, perfect footwork, and insane instincts really should not belong to a 10-year-old. Still, Gallant tells him he is fine, demanding full strength. He wants zero holding back. Both Robert and Ned go pale at the request. Ned tries to warn him off, clearly worried his friend might get broken bones. Gallant tells them not to worry. He knows exactly what he is doing as he launches forward. He has a solid read on Robert now, after those first 2 rounds of testing. The older boy has monstrous power, but swordplay is about way more than brute force. Technique exists for a reason. Gallant drives a lightning-fast diagonal slash toward his shoulder. Robert is startled, bringing his blade up to parry just in time. But right before they clash, Gallant twists mid-motion, his footwork light as a swallow. He seamlessly shifts the overhead strike into an upward slash, aiming right for the neck. Robert's pupils shrink, his heart rate spikes, and though he blocks, his stance breaks. His footing goes completely unsteady, his body swaying. Gallant smirks and closes right in. He unleashes 2 rapid strikes to the abdomen, each one ringing loudly against the guard. Robert parries frantically, eyes wide. Is this truly the skill of a mere child? Sure, he could use his sheer weight to shove Gallant down, but that would look like obvious bullying, and his immense pride will not allow it. He retreats. Taking 3 paces back, he exhales, muscles tensing before exploding forward with a devastating downward smash, carrying the absolute thunderbolt of his physical strength. The heavy wooden sword tears through the air, aimed directly at Gallant's chest. It is a calculated move, designed to blow his guard wide open and let the remaining momentum thump his chest, causing pain without actually breaking any bones. It is the face-saving compromise of a stronger boy who holds no real malice. Now watch, with 15.3 spirit, Gallant's reaction speed and vision are sharper than anyone around him. Robert's massive strike unfolds slow as molasses. Right before his eyes, Gallant instantly weighs 3 options: sidestep, parry, or close. Combat choosing the riskiest option, he does not retreat but accelerates forward into the wind of that heavy blade. His height is far inferior to Robert's, making a head-on clash a guaranteed loss, but strength and weakness are never absolute. Timing is everything, and Robert's big mistake was holding back by aiming for the chest instead of sealing his movement. He has. Robert leaves Gallant a tiny gap. His mind feels ice cold, but his blood burns like a furnace. As Robert's wooden sword starts crashing down, Gallant leans all the way back. He bends almost 90 degrees, drops to his knees, and uses his momentum to slide. The wooden sword sweeps right over Gallant's head with a sharp whoosh, hitting nothing. The heavy strike meant for the boy's chest finds only empty air. Robert's balance is completely ruined. He cannot pull back and he cannot dodge. Gallant slides right past him, bringing his own wooden sword across horizontally. He taps Robert's left side with a sharp, short, and very clear crack. Robert freezes instantly. His tall frame stiffens like a statue, his sword locked in place. The older boy stares at the mark on his side, his mouth hanging wide open. His mind is completely blank. Over on the sidelines, Ned is just as shocked. The referee stick slips from Ned's fingers, clattering right onto his foot. He does not even feel the impact, staring ahead with his quiet stoicism shattered. Ned can only stare. Robert finally turns his head toward Gallant, his throat dry. He lets out a single dry gulp. Gallant rises slowly, brushing grass off his knees. With a casual flick of his wooden sword, Gallant quietly tells him he won. Robert opens his mouth to speak, hesitates, and finally lets out a dry laugh. He calls Gallant an amazing little brat before stabbing his sword into the dirt. The weapon hits the ground with a thud as Robert stares with mixed emotions. He is clearly wondering how strong this kid will be at 15 years old. After all, he is only 10 right now. Ned steps forward in total disbelief. He knows Robert fought with everything, and that sudden slide was impossible to predict. Sure, on a real battlefield, that light tap would have bounced off steel. But in a sparring match, it is highly decisive, and now Robert has lost. Ned silently wonders what his own chances are. Gallant modestly claims it was luck. In truth, Gallant knows he needs his sword, Oathkeeper, to win a real duel. But with that legendary blade, he would stand victorious. Robert suddenly claps his shoulder. The blow is hard enough to make him wince. Robert vows to train harder now. He will drink less and chase fewer girls, or he will lose all respect. He cannot handle losing to his 10-year-old little brother. The defeat is a wake-up call. His pride is hurt, but his genuine pride in Gallant is far greater. After all, this is the heir of Tarth, his own loyal and strong brother. With a sibling this fierce, he has nothing to complain about. Besides, Jaime Lannister is next. Jaime will become insufferable in a few years, and Robert can just send Gallant. But first, Robert demands Ned step up to fight next. Revenge by proxy is on. Robert wants to see someone else suffer. He has already measured Gallant's true ability. The kid's physical strength is slightly below Ned's, but his speed is equal. His technique is flawless, and his combat instinct easily surpasses Ned's. It is an even match where the young boy holds a slight edge. Robert will not let Ned escape. Ned's lips twitch in annoyance. At 14, he is expected to easily win this bout. Losing means his confidence is going to shatter. Talk about intense pressure. He desperately wants to avoid this fight, but Robert's teasing gaze offers no exit. Left with no choice, Ned sighs and pulls the wooden sword from the ground. The oppressive pressure drops the instant Ned steps forward. He lacks Robert's raw power. This member of House Stark relies on something far different than brute force. Ned actually possesses a legendary wolf bloodline of his own, though it remains unawakened. His physical talent is quite average. In the original timeline of the story, Ned received the absolute best tutoring at Winterfell and later in the Vale. Under Jon Arryn, receiving the finest education the Seven Kingdoms could offer. And yet his actual combat record was pretty mediocre. At the Tower of Joy, he led 7 northern warriors against just 3 Kingsguard, and nearly everyone on his side died, without Howland Reed's timely intervention. All of them would have fallen, plus Arthur Dayne was practically seeking death back then, having lost his will after hearing about Aerys' end. Rhaegar, later on, when ambushed by Jaime Lannister in King's Landing, Ned performed even worse, getting overwhelmed despite actually having the numbers this time. He ended up crippled in one leg and dragged into the Red Keeps. Dark Dungeons, in a realistic power ranking, Arthur Dayne and a young Aristan would be S-tier legendary swordsman. Meanwhile, a prime Robert Prime. Jaime the Mountain and the Red Viper would land at a plus. Brienne, the Hound, and Bronn would be standard A. Ned, honestly, barely scrapes a minus. The kid isn't nervous. Not even a little. The wooden swords meet with a sharp, echoing crack. Through the kid's arm, from this clash he confirms his reading. Ned's strength is indeed greater than his, but only slightly. With the kid at 8.76, Ned's is around 9.1. Or 9.2, Fair enough, his physical talent is average, and he is only 14. Without long-term training and proper noble nutrition, Ned would have ended up nameless, perhaps even tragically, given his stubborn temperament. Crack, crack, crack. Within just a few breaths, their swords clash 7 or 8 times. Ned's expression keeps growing more solemn, while the kid remains completely composed. Ned feels he cannot break his opponent's defense. The kid seems to anticipate every single choice. Sparring with Robert was actually less frustrating because Robert relied on sheer brute force, leaving obvious openings, but Ned has agility close to the kid's own, and footwork that cannot outmaneuver the kid's, alongside swordsmanship without any exploitable openings. None. He simply cannot find a single gap in his opponent's defense, and his full-strength swings are parried by the kid without even a tremor. Ned starts to sweat, suddenly understanding exactly what Robert went through. Surely both Baratheon and Stark cannot fall to a 10-year-old in one afternoon. The loss of face would be completely unthinkable. After a few failed probes, he decides a total gamble. Since strength is his only real advantage, Ned lanes into it. Pivoting his feet, he spins his body in a full 360-degree rotation, while gripping the sword two-handed, channeling his waist and rotational force into a heavy overhead chop with all his weight behind it. It is an exceptional strike for a 14-year-old. Even the kid couldn't block this head-on without losing ground, as the heavy impact would drive his own sword into his shoulder. But the kid has been waiting for this exact moment. Ned isn't easy to hit, as his style is too steady, unlike Robert's recklessness, since the kid's reach and strength are smaller. A head-on breakthrough is highly unlikely, so this gamble is the precise opening the kid has been waiting for. His eyes narrow as Ned's body rotates into the strike, and the boy is already shifting his weight from both feet onto his right foot alone. As the wooden sword chops down, he gallant sidesteps right with one nimble step, and Ned's blade hits empty air. Ned's balance shatters, leaving a wide opening, and Gallant swings his wooden sword sideways, striking Ned's left shoulder and back. Smack, wood hits flesh. Ned freezes in body and face. Before Ned can even process his defeat, Robert's mocking laughter is already tearing across the godswood, openly delighted. That sheer relief pulls Ned out of his daze, feeling a dull pain across the back of his arm. He looks at Gallant with a grimace. Ned lost, and Robert strides forward laughing, wide enough to show all his teeth, slapping Ned's shoulder. The moment Robert lost his match, he feared he would never live it down, expecting Ned to nail him to a wall of shame. Now that Ned has lost too, his fear evaporates. Since both lost, neither can mock the other, as long as this secret stays between the three of them. Dignity is preserved. At worst, Robert figures he can bribe Gallant. Since he is his big brother, he will surely give him respect. Robert's wild laughter is half mocking amusement and half pure relief. Ned, meanwhile, is burning under that laughter. They have both just lost to a 10-year-old. How does Robert have the nerve to laugh this loud? Ned resists, rolling his eyes, and turns to Gallant, admitting he is simply no match. He says it sincerely. Gallant shakes his head, saying it was luck and that Ned's last strike nearly grazed his shoulder. That is technically true, though Gallant knows that even if they tried again, the result would be identical. The danger was only superficial, calculated in advance. Ned shakes his head, able to spot the truth, but his mind is no longer on this match. He is 14, Gallant is 10, yet already defeats him. By the time Gallant reaches Ned's age, what insane technique will he have? Could Ned at 18 possibly catch up? He thinks about it and knows the answer is no. Forget himself. Even Robert will be overwhelmed in a few years. At 10, Gallant matches Ned's strength, meaning he has prodigious natural power just like Robert. On top of that, Gallant has the technique Robert lacks. He will easily become the next sword of the morning. Ned knows he has zero chance against him, resigning himself with a quiet inward sigh. Back at the Eyrie, Ned, like Robert, was considered the best of his generation, and that confidence is now severely dented. Ned resolves to train harder back home. Robert tells Gallant not to be modest since they are so much older, yet Gallant beat them. He cannot imagine his future in a few years. Slinging an arm around Gallant's neck, Ned nods seriously, agreeing that the most terrifying part is that Gallant has both unmatched talent and the holy sword. Who could possibly beat that? Gallant scratches his head, embarrassed. He has the merit to accept their compliments openly, but the Chinese core of his old life still wants him to stay humble. Gallant invites Robert and Ned to head down to the sea. The glass sea of Tarth is the most beautiful coast on the eastern shore of Westeros. The boys climb down the rocky path from the godswood, passing through grass and stone, and within a few minutes, they reach a private beach belonging to House Tarth. It is only 5 minutes from Evenfall Hall, and the scenery is breathtaking. The water is a transparent azure, with 2 cliffs curving like the wings of an eagle to shelter the bay, leaving only a small mouth open to the tide. Large rocks sit above and below the water, with ancient trees casting deep shade. Colorful fish darting through the rocks, and seagulls calling far off. There are no waves in this sheltered cove, only glass-clear water under the bright sun. Whenever Brienne wants to play by the sea, she comes here, and Galen does too. In his past life, the famous videos of Phuket could never match this calm. Even Hawaii falls short. Standing by the shore, Robert is absolutely amazed. He asks why Galen never brought him to such a beautiful spot before. Galen explains they only passed by before, making Robert laugh as he strips. Kicking off his boots, Robert gets ready while Ned carefully folds his shirt. The cold water shocks Ned as it rises past his knees, brightening his eyes. Northern waters will freeze you to death, but this beach is different. While Goldtown is murky and rough, Tarth instantly refreshes the spirit. Galen sheds his shirt and wades in. Suddenly, Robert leaps. He dives off a high rock, cannonball splash. Ned comes in slowly. After floating for a bit, Robert suddenly grins and lunges right at Galen. He slaps the water with both hands, sending a massive wave straight into Galen's face. Galen splashes back, but Robert's insane reach easily dominates the water fight. The crossfire even hits Ned, who wipes his eyes with a highly annoyed expression. The 3 of them pelt each other for quite a while, laughing. Getting tired of losing, Galen dives. His swimming skill is at 4%. That level easily rivals experienced fishermen. He glides down effortlessly. Right down to the seabed, he spots a lobster and grabs it. He pops back up. Robert is still relentlessly splashing and overwhelmed Ned. With a playful grin, Galen chucks the lobster across the water. It smacks Robert right on the back of his neck, cold, hard, and slick. Ow! Robert slaps it on instinct and gasps as the falling creature pinches him. He shakes it off before it gets a grip, spinning around to find the culprit. He spots Galen floating nearby with a big grin and calls him a little rascal. Once they are completely spent, they lie back in the shade of the trees. Pretty relaxing, right? Galen offers to get them some grilled fish. Robert asks how, and Galen suggests shooting them with bows instead. The water is shallow and full of fish. If they aim well, it is easy pickings. Want to make it a contest? Naturally, Robert is fired up immediately. Galen wants revenge for that face full of salt water. Let the games begin. As the sun begins to set, multiple campfires light up the beach. The 3 friends sit around one fire, while guards watch the others farther off. They roast the fish they shot from the rocks earlier over the flames. They throw the tiny ones away and skewer the fat, juicy ones. It is a generous feast. Galen dominates the scoreboard by far. Over half the catch is his. Ned got a few, but Robert got only 2. Robert's swordsmanship is solid, but his archery is pretty mediocre. Robert looks across the fire and asks why his aim is so incredibly good. He drinks deeply from his wine jug, watching Galen flip the fish over the embers. Maybe it is just pure talent, Galen replies, not bothering to hide it. His natural talent for archery is genuinely much stronger than his swordsmanship. Without spending any system points, his practice has pushed it to 33%. In a few years, it will reach 50. Even Sir Barristan is amazed. Ned predicts Galen will win the archery championship at a tourney one day, too. Archery is mostly fun. Westerosi knights all wear plate armor anyway, and arrows kill foot soldiers more than they kill knights, the release of a string. And the thud of a shaft hitting a target is just deeply satisfying, Ned says. That Galen will be a champion, Ned says it quietly. Himself surprised by the absolute certainty in his voice, Galen laughs, knowing it is early. Deep down, he knows his growth will eventually place him above all Westeros, and the tourney crown will be only one small ornament along the way. Meanwhile, Robert points out that Galen actually missed the grand tourney at Lannisport 2 years ago, though. Both Ned and Robert attended, calling Rhaegar Targaryen a genuinely formidable man. Robert talks about how the prince carried himself in those lists, and the cold mood settling over the entire realm since then, with Ned chiming in with what he witnessed at the Eyrie when word from King's Landing arrived, soon. The conversation drifts to the defiance of Duskendale, which still feels recent. Enough to chill the air, Lord denies Darkland defied. The crown's tax demands for his town, refusing the king his seat and effectively holding him hostage when Ares came in person to settle things, for half. Year Ares lived in that captivity, and the man who emerged was no longer sane. Baristan Selmy alone snuck inside and broke the king free, slaying denies Darkland and earning his legendary title forever after. But the ruler who returned home was already deeply mad and paranoid. Terrified of fire, trusting nothing else, just a dark, empty hollow of a man. Robert speaks with bitter anger about Ares's increasingly frequent executions, how nobles whisper about the mad king from the wall to Dorne, and how Prince Rhaegar has fled the capital for Dragonstone with his wife and children just to escape his own father's deadly gaze. This rift between king and prince is clear for all to see, as dark undercurrents begin to surge across every single kingdom. Listening quietly, Galen keeps his expression mild, but his mind is racing. The timeline is shifting exactly as he remembers, meaning Duskendale has already fallen. Ares's madness has set, Rhaegar has retreated, and Steffon Baratheon is alive. But soon he will sail across the narrow sea on his doomed voyage. That ends at Shipbreaker Bay. The war of the usurper is coming. Robert and Ned can't see the storm coming, but Galen absolutely does. He sees the future taking shape. He still has years to train, to unlock powerful bloodlines and to train young Brienne of Tarth properly. He must marry Helena to secure House Hightower to his side. He tears off another piece of fish, chewing slowly under the dimming sky. Next morning, they sail for Storm's End on Tarth's flagship, with Robert and Ned acting as escorts and Brienne standing close with her hair tied back. Before leaving Evenfall Hall, Galen had his father visit the workshop because he wanted to bring something special on this trip, beyond basic politeness. He wanted a real product in the 2 years spent training. He used his modern knowledge to introduce two incredibly simple, yet revolutionary inventions to House Tarth: the toothbrush and toothpaste. The toothbrush is straightforward, boar bristles bound to a polished bone or wooden handle. The toothpaste is mostly chalk powder, a measure of salt, a touch of dried mint and clove for flavor and freshness, and a binder to hold it. Crude by his past life standards, but revolutionary for Westeros. Nobles here brush with rough cloth, wood ash, and herbs. Commoners do not brush at all. Within a season, the Tarth household stopped losing teeth to rot, and within a year, travelers from Storm's End and Sapphire Town were buying boxes to take home. His father was quietly patient with him on this front, letting him indulge in what seemed like a strange hobby until gold dragons started rolling in. Now his father understands why House Tarth's coffers have been steadily filling. It is a massive monopoly on a small but addictive product, and his father has begun talking to House Hightower in Old Town about distribution into the Reach. Their traders can move these toothbrushes and toothpaste through the Reach, the Westerlands, and the northwestern edge of Dorne in volumes Tarth's own ships could never reach. With that alliance, the goods bring in a massive fortune, and a marriage between House Tarth and House Hightower begins to make perfect sense, even before the political weight of the bond is counted. He has packed crates of both products in the hold for Renly's name day, gifts meant for major houses his father highlighted as worth winning over. House Baratheon obviously, but also the Tyrell representative who will be attending, and the Hightower party led by Lord Leighton himself. The voyage is short. Soon, Storm's End rises from the cliffs like a massive rib of the world. Its curved walls stand smooth and seamless, as if Brandon the Builder himself made them. Brienne presses eagerly to the rail with shining eyes, because Meister Armin has filled her with endless stories about it. Robert points out features for her, like that postern, that battery of trebuchets, and the nesting seabirds that haunt the cliff face. She nods over and over. They disembark and ride up to the great gates, and there is Duke Steffon Baratheon, alive, broad, and laughing, his wife standing right at his side, and a swaddled bundle in a nurse's arms. Renly is only weeks old, with the dark Baratheon hair already showing on his tiny head. His father presents his gifts while he presents his own boxes. Steffon laughs, embracing all three of them at once. The hall is decked with banners, the trestle tables stacked with food, and the names sliding by his ear in introduction feel like a roll call from his past lives. Memories. There is Lord Leighton Hightower with his daughter Helena and his younger daughter Linus. A young, slack-jawed Mace Tyrell stands by his mother, alongside Royce Matthijs Rowan and dozens of minor Stormland lords. He keeps his Courtesy smooth and his voice calm. At just 10 years old, he is supposed to be charming and graceful, not commanding, and that is a line he plans to walk carefully. Helena is the Hightower face that matters to him. She is 11, slender, with pale Hightower hair and a calm, watchful gaze, completely ignoring the false flirtatiousness of the other noble girls in the hall. His father made it plain over the past months that he has been corresponding with Lord Leighton about betrothal between them, formalized at 14, with marriage between 16 and 18. Exactly after the War of the Usurper ends, the timing is impeccable and he has no objections, since romantic ideas from his past life have no place in Westeros. Great houses seal alliances through marriage, and Selwyn has chosen a Hightower lady for Galen. She is rich, beautiful, and extremely well-mannered, and Galen would be a fool to reject her for some dramatic storybook love. He takes little Brienne over to greet her, and she welcomes Brienne with quiet warmth. Galen watches Helena's face for any tells. No haughtiness, no boredom, no fake cheer during their chat. Instead, she shows real interest in books and plants, with a sweet, quiet shyness. Whenever their eyes meet, the subtle blush creeping up her ears as Galen leans in to laugh at her remarks means far more to him than any political calculation. Because as the old saying goes, a young girl's genuine blush is worth more than anything. 7-year-old Linus immediately latches onto Galen with the energy of a spoiled little child, refusing to let go of his hand for half the afternoon, sobbing loudly when the families have to part the next morning. Brienne finds the whole scene hilarious. Galen thinks Linus is definitely going to grow into trouble for some poor guy, but she is already pretty enough to make it hard to dislike her. That night, Selwyn and Lord Leighton hold a long, private discussion. By morning, the betrothal is settled. At age 14, there will be a formal ceremony, with the wedding to follow at the proper time. Lord Leighton is thrilled to secure a son-in-law who holds a legendary holy sword and is famously the strongest kid of his generation. Selwyn is equally thrilled to bind the second oldest house in Westeros to the rising fortunes of Tarth. The toothbrush and toothpaste business deal is officially signed alongside it. House Hightower will distribute the products across the Reach and the Westerlands with a profit split, with trade and blood binding them. Who in Westeros would even dare to provoke them? The next day they set sail for home, and Tarth settles back into its peaceful daily rhythms. Helena is only 11, Galen is only 10, and neither is ready for anything more than friendly letters. Still, a strong first impression is enough. Over the next 4 years, massive changes shake the continent. For the Stormlands, the biggest tragedy is the sudden death of Duke Stefan Baratheon and his wife, just a few months right after young Renly's name day. King Aerys, driven by paranoid fear of his own son or some other madness, orders Duke Stefan Baratheon to cross the sea. To Essos, he is commanded to find a bride for Prince Rhaegar in the Free Cities, a girl possessing silver hair, purple eyes, and pure Valyrian blood. Stefan and Aerys had once fought side by side as young men during the War of the Ninepenny Kings, and out of a lingering sense of loyalty, Stefan accepts the task. He sets sail across the narrow sea with his wife, Cassana Estermont, but finds no Valyrian girl in any of the cities. On their return voyage, with Storm's End finally in sight, their ship smashes against the jagged rocks of Shipbreaker Bay, and everyone on board drowns. It is an absolute thunderbolt across the Stormlands. Robert, far away at the Eyrie when the news arrives, is completely shattered and utterly furious. He curses King Aerys openly in front of his guardian, Jon Arryn, who calms him down. Lord Arryn brings him back to Storm's End to be named the new duke. Robert, reined in by Jon's quiet wisdom, does not strike back yet, but his hatred runs deep and will eventually explode. In Robert's eyes, his parents, Stefan and Cassana, were essentially murdered by the Mad King. That boiling hatred will soon extend to Rhaegar, since the voyage was only to find a bride for the crown prince. Rhaegar secures a bride. Meanwhile, Jon Arryn watches young, hot-headed Robert closely. Recognizing the danger, he takes Robert to the Eyrie for years of strict guidance. Arryn wants to mold him into a proper lord and soothe his wild, burning rage. At the funeral, the young heir attends with his father and Brienne, trying to comfort Robert. But words are useless. The bloated bodies of Duke Stefan and Lady Cassana are finally found. A grueling week of searching leaves them unrecognizable, ruined by the sea. Seeing them almost breaks Robert. A dark, unforgiving hatred takes root. Years later, when Rhaegar steals Lyanna Stark, the final spark is lit. The cards are fully stacked: the sudden loss of his parents, then his stolen bride. In Robert's shoes, the young heir knows he would never let this go. He would burn their fields and hunt down every last member of their house. Driven by the young heir's fierce training example and the tragedy of his parents, Robert stops playing around at the Eyrie. He trains with absolute ferocity, living only for the day of his revenge. Over in King's Landing, things get worse. King Ares' mind cracks completely. Cruel executions multiply, whispering fear from the wall all the way to Dorne. Everyone whispers his new name, the Mad King. Under pressure, Rhaegar retreats. He marries Elia Martell of Dorne and quietly escapes to Dragonstone. Yet King Ares remains deeply hostile, consumed by growing paranoia. He rejects Rhaegar's children and refuses to attend their celebration days. Little Rhaenys and Aegon are ignored, widening the bitter royal rift. This family feud becomes an open wound for the entire realm to see. While the king's madness worsens, dangerous tension builds across the Seven Kingdoms. Meanwhile, Tarth remains wrapped in its own quiet, isolated peace. Standing apart from the mainland, the Lord of Tarth keeps his children secluded. The young lord quietly watches the political storm brewing on the horizon. He tracks the major shifts, but focuses his real energy on self-improvement. Their booming toothbrush business makes Evenfall incredibly wealthy, and his father is now highly generous with training. Using his vast gold, he builds ties with foreign lords. High-ranking nobles in Pentos and lies secretly sell him dangerous, condemned criminals. These death row prisoners are sent straight to Tarth's dungeon for the young lord to judge. He even reaches deep into Slaver's Bay, drawing captives from Yunkai and Meereen. Buying up more and more prisoners, pouring these extreme resources solely into him. He has judged so many souls that he only remembers the truly monstrous sins. Deep in the Godswood, the heir goes through his grueling daily routine. Sir Godwyn no longer spars with him, having declared him fully graduated. In actual combat and swordsmanship, the young master has completely surpassed him. There is nothing left to learn, so he trains alone under his own regimen. Today he is shirtless in dark linen trousers, working under the hot sun. He powers through heavy push-ups with a massive, heavy log across his back. 318, 319, sweat drips onto the grass. At 14, his body is rapidly maturing. He stands nearly 1.8 meters tall, ripped and powerful. His muscles are lean but packed with explosive force, doing over 300 push-ups. With a 40-caddy log is a physical feat that ordinary knights can only dream of. Strength is immense, making carrying a 40-caddy log look like a simple feat. Nothing in the Stormlands compares. 350. Finally done, Gallant rolls the log off, sitting on the grass to catch his breath. Over 4 years, his features have fully matured. His jet black hair slightly curly and cut short, damp at the tips. His eyes are a deep clear blue, ringed with a faint circle of pale gray at the pupils. His nose is straight, his skin fair, and his thin lips rosy, combined with a shredded physique that women definitely notice. He carries himself in the words of his past life like a young Keanu Reeves. He grabs a towel, wiping his face, pulling up the screen. Gallant Tarf, strength 18.73. Agility 18.11, spirit 19.14, swordsmanship 62%, archery 69%, riding 48, common tongue 69, swimming 72. Valyrian 6%, Evenstar 9%, Targaryen 1, Storm King 1, Oathkeeper. Gold maxed, no pets, 1 judgment point, strength gain 0.01 since. This morning, a small smile appears, looking at this screen after 4 years of brutal grind. It is hard not to feel incredibly spoiled. His current physical stats would easily crush any knight on Tarth. A normal man's strength and agility sit around 1.0, while trained knights peak near 1.5. But Gallant's physical stats are both well over 18, according to the system's own framing. That makes him 18 times stronger than average, sparring with Tarth's vassals and wandering hedge knights. Only Sir Godwyn and a rare few elite fighters have ever pressed him, and even they barely managed. Hedge knights averaged 10 to 30% in swordsmanship, while well-trained knights hit 40. Masters like Sir Godwyn reach 55, but Gallant is at 62, elite even for the Seven Kingdoms. Crucially, his spirit score of 19.14 boosts his mental insight, his adaptability, and neural reaction speed to nearly double that of a normal man. Combined with his sheer power, speed, and refined technique, it creates a deadly synergy where 1 + 1 is far greater than 2. He could easily beat Jaime Lannister, who is a year older, and even best Robert Baratheon in a rematch. In a Verdual legendary blades like Barristan or Arthur Dane would still defeat him, but in a death match with Oathkeeper drawn, Gallant would win, the holy swords devastating. Edge completely shreds through any armor they wear. His rapid growth has outpaced his own expectations, largely thanks to his father. Without that massive network in Essos, he could never have executed judgment, 70 to 80 death row prisoners from Tarth. Nearly 200 from Essos over 4 years. It took those numbers to push his base attributes near 2.0, excluding his natural teenage growth. But looking closer, his bloodline column reveals another intriguing surprise. The legendary blood of the Evenstar has climbed to 9% without spending points. It is pure natural growth, proving his talent is incredibly high. This heritage comes from the ancient Evenstar lineage, passed down from a forgotten ancestor. Though the full effects remain unknown, his insanely fast physical development is definitely connected to it. At just 14 years old, he is nearly 1.8 meters tall, likely reaching 1.9 meters by 16, inheriting massive height and a legendary constitution. The rest will unfold as his bloodline percentage rises, closing the screen. A cheerful voice echoes from the trees, calling him brother and saying, "Their father and Meister Armin sent her." Gallant looks up to see young Brienne running toward him with a beaming smile. At 10 years old, she is already nearly 1.65 meters tall. She is broad-shouldered, her features neutral and lacking the soft sweetness of a typical girl, but she is far from ugly. Her brother made her keep her hair long in a ponytail, so even when her face is plain, her silhouette never looks too masculine. Over the years, he has given massive attention to her dental health, so, unlike the original Brienne, her teeth grew in clean, not blindingly white or perfectly straight but completely normal. Her skin is not rough either. He had the maids and nannies treat her with the proper skin care used in the household. Despite the scorching sun and constant sea winds of Tarth, her cheeks stay soft. She is naturally fair, her platinum blonde hair and brows catching the light, while her clear blue eyes make her smile completely contagious. She no longer clings to him like she did when she was small. She is a young lady now, jogging over without losing breath, calling out that Meister Armin and father are looking for him. Meister Armin, in recent years, lacks the energy he once had, and their daily schedules have split. His study time with the Meister is now 8 to 9:30 in the morning. Afterward, he follows father to learn estate management, touring the towns of Tarth, learning how taxes and docks run, and how to handle weather disasters or mediate disputes between the small folk. In the afternoon, he does his own training. In the evening, he chooses between more training, study, or rest depending on his mood. Brienne's routine is much more regular: morning study with Meister Armin and afternoon night training with Sir Godwin. Father had originally hoped to raise her as a lady, practicing needlework and flower arrangement, but Brienne's talent there was even worse than Arya Stark's. In the tales, trust me, she wanted swords, wanted to be a knight-like her brother. Father resisted at first, believing that was no path for a noble girl, but her stubbornness combined with her brother's advocacy broke him down. Plus, after the near drowning that brought the brother into this world, father became much more flexible. As long as the children grow up healthy and as long as his son is already doing well, he doesn't need to be strict. With Brienne, if she enjoys swordsmanship, she can practice for fun. But as she trained, the reports from Sir Godwin began to shock him. Brienne's talent, while behind her brother's, far exceeds any normal boy's. Her strength might even surpass the knight's. Father heard this and went slightly dazed, dreading the future, because he feared she would never find a husband. By then, of course, Brienne was already swinging greatsword with terrifying power, and there was no forcing her back to needlework. With her brother protecting her, father gritted his teeth and accepted it. Sometimes, watching her natural gifts, he sighs, what a pity she was not born a boy, since a girl has trouble shining in a knighthood ruled entirely by men. But her brother sees it differently. With his help and guidance, Brienne's future achievements will surpass even her original story peak. What's wrong with being a woman, as long as she defeats every man who refuses to believe? She will be the strongest female knight in Westeros. He tells her this often, and she smiles every single time. Looking ahead, he wonders what his father and Meister Armin want. He asks while pulling on a linen shirt and ruffling Brienne's hair, but she has no idea. They did not say, she answers, only that they were both frowning, both of them. That suggests something serious, forcing them to hurry straight back to Evenfall Hall. His father is waiting in the Great Hall. Once he dismisses Brienne, he speaks directly. He tells him directly, Lord Hoster Tully of Riverrun has sent a letter. To celebrate his daughter's birth, he is hosting a grand tourney at Harrenhal. Every lord and knight in the 7 kingdoms is invited to attend. The tourney at Harrenhal, his eyes narrow, we all know the tragedy waiting here. Excitement and sharp nervousness rise together. The long wait is finally over. The day has arrived. This event at Harrenhal is easily one of the most critical. Gatherings in the world of Game of Thrones, the War of the Usurper begins here. The fall of House Targaryen and countless future tragedies all trace back to this moment. His father warns that this tourney is not as simple as it looks, prompting him to ask why. He explains that the event is likely funded and organized behind the scenes by none other than Lord Tywin Lannister. This is a massive surprise he never expected. His father shakes his head, asking if he knows the size of the prize money. Curiously, he asks how much. The calm reply is 60,000 gold dragons. His eyes go wide. He asks if that is the total for all 3 events. No, just the joust. The winner of the melee gets 40,000 gold dragons. And the archery champion gets 20,000. He gasps at the total of 120,000. In prize money alone, that completely eclipses the tourney Robert hosts later in the original timeline. A King's Landing to celebrate Ned Stark, and that insane sum is only the beginning. Factor in food, lodging, and wine, and that cost multiplies insanely. House Tully could never afford this alone. The secret backer must have endless wealth. Only a few powerful houses in the 7 kingdoms could dream of paying for this. Curious, he asks why his father suspects Tywin. The answer is simple. This tourney will bring together nearly every single lord and knight in the land. His father reveals that letters from Lord Leighton suggest Tywin has a hidden political agenda. He wants to discuss removing King Aerys and putting Prince Rhaegar on the throne instead. So the secret comes from Lord Leighton. House Hightower holds a massive network. It might not be as sharp as Varys, but it spans across all Westeros. Since the Citadel is in Old Town, every sworn Meister secretly leaks information back home. His father smiles, calmly noting that picking a side is a game for greater lords. Their only duty is to follow their liege lord, making him smile as well. The bird sticking its head out gets shot, so they must follow the crowd. But he warns that things will not be that simple, making his father ask why. He explains that a massive gathering of lords discussing treason is a major risk. What if the Mad King himself decides to show up at Harrenhal in person? Hearing this, his father immediately frowns and falls into deep, silent thought. Realizing the danger, his father asks if the king will suspect Tywin. He nods solemnly. The king currently fears Tywin more than anyone else in Westeros. He might be crazy, but Varys and his little birds are watching everything closely now. Once the crown catches wind of this, they will strike. His father agrees with him. His father nods thoughtfully, reflecting on how erratic and dangerous King Aerys has become. Though mad, the king's methods are sharper, not duller. Those he burns are indeed his real enemies. Selwyn warns Galen that they should not wade into the muddy waters of the tourney, changing his mind out of fear of meeting Aerys at Harrenhal. The Mad King is unpredictable, burning men on mere whims. And he does not want his son near Aerys' sight. Galen shakes his head with a smile, telling his father not to worry if Aerys acts recklessly at Harrenhal. Just like in King's Landing, it plays directly into Tywin Lannister's hand. Selwyn considers the idea and agrees, with all the realm's great nobility gathered in one place. Any open execution by the king would provoke universal fury, allowing Tywin to unite the lords, depose Aerys, and crown Prince Rhaegar. Furthermore, Galen adds, his current strength makes him more than capable of protecting himself at Harrenhal. His stats are only slightly inferior to Barristan and Arthur Dayne in a fair spar, but with Oathkeeper in hand, even Barristan and Arthur Dayne can be killed. In a crowded, chaotic place like Harrenhal, Galen can escape any threat. His father nods with a smile, asking if he truly wants to go. Yes. Galen replies he refuses to miss the tourney at Harrenhal. Besides, Helena and they have not seen each other in years and can easily arrange a meeting. There, over the past few years, focused on cultivation, Galen has only visited Old Town with his father once. He hasn't seen Helena since, keeping in touch only by Raven letters. He wants to see 15-year-old Helena in person. He is 14 years old. While she is 15, 2 years since they last met, their correspondence has only deepened. His fondness for her, Helena has a calm temperament, loving plants and Unusual books, because Galen is a transmigrator with broad modern knowledge of botany and curiosities. Their correspondence has flowed smoothly. He eagerly wants to see her in the flesh. Besides, Harrenhal will feature one of the most famous moments in the saga, when Prince Rhaegar crowns Lyanna Stark Queen of Love and Beauty before Robert. Talk about a legendary front row seat. He is not missing that drama. His father agrees, promising to arrange for skilled guards to accompany him, but strictly forbids taking Brienne. Selwyn knows his son's strength. Galen alone with loyal guards can escape any trap, but bringing Brienne would skyrocket the risk. Galen thinks it over and nods. Brienne will be heartbroken, but it cannot be helped. By the way, Galen, the snake-fine flowers he had his father buy from Norvos have arrived. His father suddenly shares. They have arrived, Galen repeats pleasantly. Surprised, the so-called snake-fine flower has a very famous name on Earth, hops. This rare plant grows only in the hills of Norvos, climbing trees and wooden frames. Like slithering snakes, the flower is shaped like a mulberry, with petals like snake scales, hence the local name. Helena had mentioned them to Galen in their letters. After finding them in a botanical encyclopedia in Old Town's great library, and from her detailed description, Galen immediately recognized hops he had his father send merchants to buy a massive quantity. Westeros has plenty of ales, ciders, and wines, but completely lacks proper beer. If these snake-fine flowers truly are hops, he can brew authentic beer, yielding immense profits. His father asks Galen if there is anything special about this flower. Galen smiles, telling him only that his pen pal Helena suggested its potential and he wants to test it out. Already in his mind, Galen is mapping out the production lines, the required secrecy, and alliances with Old Bayfur in Sapphire Town, imagining how House Tarth could one day raise a fleet to rival the Arbors just on beer profits. The Harrenhal tourney will be one stage and the brewery another. House Tarth has reached a turning point where every careful step finally starts to show, and Galen intends to make it count. He tells his father that Thundersmoke is a fine name. Reaching out to stroke the horse's forehead, the smoke-gray stallion senses his intent and pushes its head right into his palm, a gentle gesture. From a beast that should be wild, Galen circles him twice, growing fonder with every step. That smoky gray coat is incredibly rare, sophisticated and beautiful. Back on Earth, he knows this horse would be the equivalent of a sleek silver supercar. His father smiles, handing the reins over and declaring that the majestic stallion now belongs directly to Galen. Riding the beast, Galen swings up in one motion onto the perfectly fitted saddle. And the moment he is mounted, he feels the difference. Thundersmoke's shoulder height is far greater than any horse he has ridden before. From up here, his view widens, his balance steadies, and the beast's powerful muscles beneath him flex with ready, coiled energy. He tugs the reins gently, and the stallion understands instantly, breaking into a brisk trot that quickly becomes a smooth canter. The horse perfectly adjusts his rhythm to his rider, picking clean lines through the grass, as if reading Galen's mind in advance. None of the horses in Evenfall Hall's stables ever offered an experience like this. No wonder the Dothraki value their horses so highly. A majestic treasure like this is exceedingly rare. When Galen reins the beast back to his father, he is reluctant to dismount, asking how many gold dragons this creature cost. 20, Lord Tarth says calmly. Yes, you heard that right. 20 gold dragons. That is an absolute fortune, making Galen laugh in disbelief. Normal travel horse is just silver, and even war horses rarely top 10. Even a noble's mount rarely exceeds 10 gold dragons. Thundersmoke costing 20 is outrageous, a price average lords would never pay regardless of their deep coffers. Yet thinking it through, 20 is fair. He is top tier, coming from the Dothraki, who almost never sell their best, and the shipping alone from the Dothraki Sea to Tarth covers over 1,000 miles of open ocean. His father waves him down, noting there are still 2 days before they leave for Harrenhal, meaning there is plenty of time to bond with Thundersmoke. First, there is something else. Galen dismounts. 2 young attendants his father brought along step forward, carrying a large wooden tray. He was so focused on the stallion that he never noticed them. Lifting the black cloth, a set of deep gray plate armor with a beautiful metallic sheen comes into view. The metal carries faint, flowing patterns like ripples on water, catching the light with a subtle glow. Low, understated nobility. The helmet design is simple and practical, lacking flashy flourishes, but featuring a raised arc at the brow for protection. Without sacrificing balance, the armor is sturdy yet elegant. Galen looks up. Completely surprised, asking what this is forged from, Lord Tarth smiles, answering Valyrian steel and asking if he recognizes it. Galen is stunned, protesting that this cannot be real. His father shakes his head, explaining free cities, having witnessed Valyria's ancient glory, have long pursued the dream of recreating Valyrian steel, a master smith of Karth in his attempts produced this metal not as light, not as strong, but far better than common fine steel and completely rust-resistant. As he runs his fingers over the rippling patterns, he realizes where he has seen them before. This is essentially Damascus steel. Back in his old life, his classmates were always dragging him to forging contests after school. He knows these patterns by heart, and he knows that rust resistance is its signature trait. Father holds up 2 fingers, again signaling 20 gold dragons, surprisingly affordable for such craftsmanship. His father smiles wider. It was practically a gift. The toothbrushes and toothpaste have grown incredibly popular among the Carthian nobility to lock in long-term trade. They practically forced this armor on them, a gift that still costs 20 gold. Dragons makes his mouth twitch. The margins on hygiene products in Westeros and Essos are truly extraordinary. Standing there looking at the patterns, a wild idea takes hold. Could he replicate Damascus steel himself? He knows nothing about smithing, but he watched plenty of forging videos in his old life, and with proper guidance, a skilled smith might stumble onto the technique. Karth even has its own iron mine. If House Karth can produce Damascus weaponry, the strategic gain will be immense, but time is too tight before the tourney. He will start the experiment after he returns. The 2 attendants help him into the under mail, then layer on the heavy plate, breastplate, pauldrons, vambraces, Vald's helm, and finally fasten a gray-blue cloak across his shoulders. The fit is perfect. With his height now near 6 feet, the armor sits cleanly on him, and the cloak lifts his silhouette. Seriously, the sheer presence is unmatched. Combined with the cold authority of a seasoned executioner, he becomes something the 2 attendants cannot quite look at without holding their breath. Galadin of Morn reborn. That is the exact impression he sees crossing their faces. Father stands looking at him with a quiet flush of emotion, plainly thinking that without even realizing it, he has grown into a man. Among the younger generation of the 7 kingdoms, he has become the true standout in ability, intellect, appearance, and bearing. House Hightor is getting a slight bargain. The thought briefly crosses Father's face before he dismisses it. Helena is excellent in her own right. He moves around in the armor, finding it quite comfortable, and regrets only that Oathkeeper is not on him at the moment. Because with Thundersmoke beneath him, Oathkeeper at his hip, and this rippling deep gray plate, he would have the unmistakable air of an absolute boss waiting at the edge of a hunting wood. Father addresses the pair, saying they now serve Galen as his attendants. The 2 of them bow deeply, their faces shining with the honor. Serving as a personal attendant to a noble heir is a massive step up. Donning armor is a complicated business, and a knight always requires at least one squire. At 14, he is still too young to be properly knighted, and so he is given 2 squires in training, hand-picked by Father from clean, sharp families with bright minds. The thin, freckled, brown-haired boy looks oddly familiar to him. Father reminds him that this is old Fex's son, who first pointed him toward where Oathkeeper lay 6 years ago. The boy bows and proudly confirms it. He introduces himself to the young master as Peak, a simple name for a boy who recently had nothing. Galen nods with a warm smile. If the boy proves loyal and clever, he will surely reward him with a bright future. He then turns to the other recruit, a chestnut-haired boy with a solid, steady frame. Galen asks his name, and the boy replies that he is called Harrison. He speaks with smooth respect, though a faint spark of excitement shines in his eyes. When Galen asks if his father is a hunter, both of them are visibly startled. Harrison confirms it, wondering how the young lord knew. Galen brushes it off as a simple guess. But in truth, Galen's sharp mind can easily read the readiness built into the boy's muscles. Harrison carries himself like a man who has spent years surviving in predator-filled wilds. Galen orders the armor removed and sends his father back to the castle. He stays behind in the Godswood, alone with his magnificent new horse, Thundersmoke. Galen refuses to let fancy gifts distract him because his daily training is not yet finished. He won't skip a workout just to play with his new horse. Missing even one day is dangerous. That is the exact moment hard-earned discipline begins to completely unravel. His habits from his past life and his 6 years in Westeros rely on a strict rule. Make detailed plans in advance, then complete them without ever wavering. This unwavering focus is how a poor boy in his past life secured a top university spot. And it is exactly how a transmigrator will conquer a kingdom in this new world. Galen enjoys life's pleasures, but he refuses to ever let them control him. He finishes his grueling routine, wipes off his sweat, and feeds Thundersmoke some fresh grass. Only then does he mount up and head toward the stunning beach of Sapphire Bay. Galen riding a horse along the shoreline is pure bliss, with soft sand cushioning every stride. The sea breeze hits his face as the orange tide rolls beautifully beside them. Now watch as he lets Thundersmoke open up to a heart-pounding gallop. At full speed, the horse runs as fast as a terrifying lightning strike. His heavy hooves thrum like deep rolling thunder against the packed sand. His dark mane streams like smoke as Galen later takes his sister Brienne for a ride. They return home, and over the next 2 days, Galen focuses entirely on bonding with his stallion. He bonds with the horse, but the system's legendary pet slot remains dark. This means Thundersmoke does not meet the threshold to be classified as a legendary beast. While a direwolf or a dragon would easily qualify, this horse is merely mortal. Still, Thundersmoke sits right at the absolute limit of what a normal horse can be. If only the system allowed Galen to invest points to upgrade his companion. But he cannot change the animal's natural limits. On the 5th day, Galen takes his father out. They head to a tower in Evenfall Hall, cleared out by the steward Claude's workers. The space has been converted into a new brewery for the old Master Bafer. His father is highly skeptical, asking if it is truly possible to brew alcohol this fast. Rather than explaining, Galen simply gestures for Bafer to bring out the wooden cask. They retrieve the fermented batch that has been resting inside the cool chamber. By now, even the old brewer's doubts have completely melted away. For days, he has been checking the cask as the rich aroma steadily grew stronger. The usual sour smells and off flavors of cheap ale are entirely gone. Instead, a pure, rich malt scent rises with a beautifully complex floral note. The old brewer has never made anything like this, fueling his quiet excitement. Galen leans down to inhale the rich aroma, letting the sweet scent fill his senses. He catches the scent. It is far stronger than any industrial beer from his past. Malt-to-water ratio here is 1:3, handmade with 0 shortcuts. An authentic aroma and perfect fermentation, it is absolutely spot on. Ideally, they would let it sit another week, but Galen leaves for Harrenhal tomorrow. They have to open it now. Galen pries off the lid and the rich malt aroma rolls out. His father and steward Claude both blink in surprise. The brew is an absolute success. Not only does it work, the smell is striking. They only know medieval ale. Cloying sweetness usually masks the malt, but this barrel is clean. It is fresh and incredibly refreshing. Inside lies a clear, pale golden liquid. A soft white foam sits at the rim, with just a thin sediment at the bottom. In clarity alone, it is leagues above any basic ale they have ever seen. Old Bafer hands Galen a ladle, and he scoops a small sip. The taste is wonderful. It is richer than any draft beer from his past life, carrying strong floral notes. The hops add an herbaceous touch, but there is a catch: the carbonation is missing. He has no way to add carbon dioxide yet, but that does not even matter. This easily surpasses any ale in Westeros. In flavor, it is no longer simple ale. This is real beer. Behind him, Old Bafer is practically drooling, dying for a taste. The brewer hands a second ladle to the father, who lifts it and takes a sip. His eyes go wide. Rich malt and floral notes instantly bloom across his palate. A pleasant aftertaste of sweet malt rises back up, warming his entire chest. He swallows and stares. Incredible. Even a lord used to fine wines is stunned. He has to admit this flavor is unique. He looks at Galen, utterly amazed. He gets why his son dragged him here. Old Bafer cannot wait any longer. Steward Claude waves the old brewer forward. He eagerly scoops, inhales, and sips. He closes his eyes, then he gives a slow, appreciative nod. He praises Galen as truly remarkable, admitting he never imagined this kind of flavor. The brewer feels like he has wasted his entire life on ordinary brewing. The father asks for his professional judgment, and Old Bafer praises the quality. He declares it is incomparable to regular ale, easily matching the finest of wines. He calls the malt aroma superb. Half brewer and half drunkard, his eyebrows dance. Steward Claude, who rarely drinks due to his endless duties, takes a polite sip. His expression shifts immediately as the rich malt aftertaste blooms in his mouth. It leaves a pleasant, lingering finish. Galen turns and asks his father for his thoughts. The older man is deeply moved. He never expected his son to actually pull this off. The young master just has a knack for pulling off the absolute impossible. He seriously calls the drink extraordinary, suggesting they give it a brand new name. Galen says to just call it beer, simple. His father agrees completely with him. New name allows a higher price, and calling it ale would only cheapen it. Galen hands his father a parchment. It contains crucial instructions for Old Bafer. These are improvement directions for the brewer to test while Galen is away. He wants him to try blending barley malt with wheat, oats, or corn. This will help develop white beer, pale ale, and dark stouts for different tastes. He also notes to experiment with adding hops at different stages of the boil. Varying the timing will yield completely different flavors during fermentation. They must also test temperatures to optimize bubble retention. And taste, his father reads it, nodding as he realizes the sheer profit. Margins of alcohol. House Redwine's legendary wealth is famous across all the nobility. Westeros and Tarth's geographic position is actually better than the Arbor's. For distribution, if they run beer well, House Tarth will undergo a monumental transformation. They discuss secrecy in private, knowing the brewing process. Must never leak, his father knows. The toothbrush and toothpaste taught him what monopoly profit looks like. He will not be careless with something this massive. Large, the young lord leaves the rest to him. That evening, he begins the inventory of everything he is taking to Harrenhal. Galena, his chestnut-haired personal maid, asks with delight if she is coming along too. He assures her, of course. There are clothes and items that must ride in the carriage, and she can ride with them. Galena is 19, fully grown and fair-skinned because she does not work the fields, slender and well-proportioned, with a gentle face, and her hair in a clean ponytail. With her looks, she could easily have married a wealthy merchant, but she has been his personal maid for years. He cannot imagine letting Peake or Harrison handle dressing him or laundering his clothes. The trip will take half a month, perhaps a full month. Bringing her along is natural, and Galena's face glows. She has never left Tarth in her life. She has heard from him that this tourney at Harrenhal will be the grandest Westeros for decades, and she wants to see it for herself. She fusses over his luggage, checking and double-checking. Late at night, with everything ready, he climbs into bed. Galena, about to blow out the candle, hears him pat the bed beside him, asking her to sleep there tonight. Her cheeks flush red. The blush is unusually beautiful against her fair skin. She answers softly, blows out the candle, and slips under the bedding beside him. Galena at 19 is at her loveliest age, her body fully developed, her skin extraordinarily fine. Easy to hold, she has been his for some months now, ever since they tasted the forbidden fruit together one evening. Meister Armand supplies her with moon tea 3 times a month at her quiet request. No more, because more than 3 doses in a single month risks lifelong infertility. No one explicitly demanded this of her, but as his personal maid, she knows the rules and her place. He is still young, and an unplanned child would only complicate things. She drinks the tea quietly each morning, never burdening him with a single question. He closes his eyes and lets her warmth ease him into sleep. By the time he wakes, Galena is fully dressed, his clothes laid out, along with his toiletry set. She helps him dress, and as he brushes his teeth, he pushes the window open to take in the morning air. Thick wall of malt aroma floats over from the brewery tower, cooking smoke rising from its chimney still. Old Bafer has been working hard all through the night. Given his father's temperament and the brewer's excitement, that is no surprise at all. After washing up, he checks his belongings one last time and has Galena summon servants to carry the luggage downstairs. In the great hall, his father is already at the long table with Brienne beside him, her eyes red and lips pursed. She has plainly tried to plead her way onto this trip again and been refused. Once more, throughout breakfast, his father restates a series of travel precautions. For going abroad, Brienne eats sullenly. After the meal, his father gives the steward. Claude receives a quick glance, returning shortly with 4 guards. 2 are familiar faces. First is Stoyne, an elite ranger and one of the finest scouts on Tarth. He is the man Lord Selwyn trusts with the most dangerous missions. Then there is Quill, the stableman's robust son, standing well over 2 meters tall. He is a gentle giant who heals horses as easily as he crushes brigands. The other 2 recruits are striking. One is a slender man in his 40s. He carries a blackwood longbow, his graying hair ruffled gently by the sea wind. An old scar runs like a fishhook from his left brow down to his cheek. Weary eyes carry a faint, barely noticeable smile at the corner. His father introduces him as Boreas, the absolute finest archer on the island. A fisherman since boyhood, his arrows have never missed since the age of 15. He hunts bears and birds of prey by shooting them cleanly through the eye. This keeps their pelts undamaged, earning him quite a reputation across the Stormlands. The last man appears to be from the Free Cities, in his 30s. He has olive skin, a handsome face, and neatly trimmed red hair. A slender rapier rests in a silver-inlaid scabbard at his hip. This Bravosi water dancer, Salio Dorino, instantly intrigues the young lord. Lord Selwyn smiles, sensing his son's deep confusion about this foreign warrior. He explains that Salio fell desperately in love. He ran off with the Sea Lord's mistress and had to flee Bravos immediately. Through an old contact named Kem, he eventually made his way to Tarth. Bold move right there, and the young lord is genuinely impressed. Stoin, Quill, and Boreas all look at Salio with pure admiration. Boreas gives a thumbs up, Salio grins and explains it was true love. The girl was forced into it, making their escape a romantic rescue. But Bravos has a long reach across the Free Cities. Pentos and Kohur would be dangerous, but Westeros is far enough to hide. The Sea Lord would have to hire a faceless man, which is incredibly expensive. That price would buy a whole new harem, meaning Salio is safe. Steward Claude finishes the carriage, and they ride down to Sapphire Port. The Evening Star waits for them there, a slender, three-masted ship. Its hull is painted blue and gray to blend with the Tarth seas. Broad white sails bear the family sigil, and the prow features a carved woman. Holding a lantern over the waves, she guides them as the young lord bids farewell. He boards with Galena, Peck Harrison, and his 4 newly acquired guards. Lord Selwyn nods solemnly. Brienne's eyes are red, but she fights back the tears. She silently vows to train twice as hard to join him one day. She dreams of riding to a grand tourney right beside her beloved brother. The ship unmoors, leaving Sapphire Port behind. They are not headed for Storm's End. Instead, they sail north up the narrow sea, sailing past Dragonstone. They will enter the Bay of Crabs, docking eventually at Maidenpool. This harbor is only a single day of riding away from Harrenhal. Traveling by sea avoids the dangerous bandits currently plaguing the inland roads. Legendary knights recently cleared the Kingswood Brotherhood, but risks remain. Up in the crow's nest, the young lord holds Galena close to steady her. She lets out a soft cry of pure joy as the boundless blue sea opens up in every direction. Down below, Stoen, Quill, Boreas, Salio, Peck, and Harrison are chatting and laughing, mostly sharing jokes about Salio's wild adventure with the Sea Lord's mistress. Soon, Aelin climbs down to a quiet corner of the aft deck to start his daily routine: stretching, side jumps, heavy push-ups, and sit-ups, 6 years of perfecting a workout that suits him, blending modern fitness routines from his past life with what Sir Godwyn taught him. Harrison, fetching ale for Boreas, catches sight of Aelin and freezes. He has heard the rumors, but he has never seen him actually drill. After a moment, he approaches, asking to train alongside him. Aelin agrees, warning him that his routine is brutal and he never misses a day. Harrison nods eagerly, drops the drinks, and falls in beside him, trying to mimic his movements. The squire keeps up for 20 or 30 minutes before totally burning out. He has solid fundamentals, the exact reason Lord Tarth chose him as Aelin's squire. Peck appears looking for Harrison, sees them working out, and begs to join. Aelin tells him to start tomorrow since today is almost done. After a while on deck, Harrison collapses face first onto the deck. Aelin keeps training for another half hour at increased intensity, while Peck just watches, completely stunned by the effort. Stoen and Quill come over, laughing as they explain to Boreas how relentlessly Aelin trains. The seasoned veterans are quietly impressed. Few young nobles ever drill themselves like this. It is no wonder he earned his spurs at just 14. Soon, lunchtime arrives, bringing a massive feast of rich wine, ale, and savory meat stew. There are roasted pork ribs, smoked fish, and fresh bread, though not as grand as Evenfall Hall. Aelin eats heartily. Later that afternoon, he asks Beric for archery pointers. Beric shoots down passing seagulls with ease. Incredible accuracy. Aelin's bow skill sits at 69%. Elite marksman, but Beric is easily at 85%. He shares some of his closely guarded secrets, the kind he would normally keep to himself only, offering them because Aelin is the future Lord of Tarth, ensuring his goodwill will pay. For his family many times over, under his guidance, the young lord quickly spots flaws in his form. After making the adjustment, his bow skill jumps to 71%. The next morning, bright sunlight streams through the wooden blinds onto a bed. Galena is curled warm against Aylin's chest, her rich chestnut hair fanned across the pillow. Breathing softly, she wakes up finding herself in his arms, her cheeks turning a soft rosy pink in the morning light, gently lifting his hand. From her waist, she pauses to press his palm against her cheek with her eyes closed before quietly slipping away into her small alcove. From a shelf, she reaches for paper packets to brew her moon tea, mixing bay leaves and chamomile with a single black seed, crushing them together in a small clay cup of warm water. Meister Armin warned her only 3 doses a month. She tries to stay perfectly silent so she does not wake him, knowing her place. Even when those rules are left unsaid, by the time Aylin stirs, his clothes are ready. She helps him dress, and he brushes his teeth at the open window as a breeze carries the scent of malt across the bay. Old Bafer must have worked all night. Aylin smiles, finishes dressing, and slowly makes his way downstairs. Table with a red-eyed Brienne nearby. Lord Tarth is laying down his final warnings. After breakfast, Gallant is introduced to the 4 guards from before. Stoin and Quill greet him warmly, before his father introduces Barik and Celio. Celio is a Bravosi water dancer. They quickly escort him out. At the docks, Brienne hugs him tightly, stubbornly refusing to shed a single tear. Their ship slips out of Sapphire Port. After 3 days at sea, his archery level increases to 71%, while his swordsmanship climbs to 63%. From sparring, the elegant water dancer style is purely single-handed. Lighter and quicker than a knight's, lethal without armor, with beautiful footwork. Most Westerosi knights look down on this, but Gallant certainly does not. A true master absorbs the core strengths, discarding any useless dross. Synthesizing multiple schools into one, by dusk on the 3rd day the ship finally slides into Maidenpool Harbor. Lord William Mouton, the new ruler, comes down to the docks in person to welcome them warmly. He is rather plump, around 30, looking neither imposing nor particularly clever. In the original story, he was notoriously weak, causing Maidenpool to suffer. He greets them with extreme courtesy, perhaps a bit too warm. They exchange pleasantries, and he guides them past Jonquil's pool, the famous hot spring open to the sky, with a stone bathhouse built beside it. This holy bathhouse is run by the sisters and only open to women. He suggests Gallant bathe in the castle's private spring instead, which he gladly accepts. Maidenpool Castle is constructed of pale red stone and sits proudly on a hill overlooking the town, boasting beautiful semicircular towers on top. Out of all Riverland's strongholds, this is easily the most aesthetically pleasing castle. Traditional bread and salt are presented. A steward shows him to his ground floor guest room, which opens directly onto a private courtyard hot spring pool. It is crafted from dark gray stone and enclosed by high wooden fences. Galena studies this stunning architecture. Gallant leans in and whispers to her, suggesting they bathe together. Her cheeks flush red and her ears burn. She immediately begs him to wait until after dark. Once night falls, they soak together in the steaming water. The natural warmth quickly melts away his tiredness from 3 long days at sea. He realizes he should definitely find a natural hot spring back on Tarth to build a private vacation villa for Helena and himself. Later, William sends a steward to invite him to a grand evening feast. With Galena's gentle assistance, he quickly dresses and walks down. The great hall is surprisingly crowded, with a dozen noble guests already seated, including local knights, the lord's family, and a striking pair he instantly recognizes as Dornish royalty. The young man is around 20, with bronze skin, sharp dark eyes, glossy black hair, and an incredibly dangerous smirk on his handsome face. Beside him is a gorgeous, voluptuous woman with captivating eyes. Out of everyone at the table, these two possess the strongest presence. That copper skin and arrogance can only mean one thing: the Red Viper is here. William warmly invites Gallant to sit as a maid pulls out a heavy oak chair, introducing his esteemed guests to the newcomer. He gestures to Prince Oberyn Martell of Dorne and his companion Lady Ilaria. Gallant nods politely. Oberyn ignores the greeting, staring back with intense curiosity.